Okay, looks like the stream is live, I see.
Agora não se... Yes, we're live.
Olá.
Olá, pessoal, tudo bem? Está começando mais um C.A.S.H, que é o Conte a Sua História. Hoje estamos internacional. Esse que está do meu lado é o Albert, que será o intérprete. Quem está aqui, o convidado de hoje é Eric Clayton, o vocalista da lendária Saviour Machine, e agora também Eric Denine. Eric, muito obrigado pelo convite, na verdade, por ter aceito o convite e estar conversando conosco aqui neste dia.
Eric, thank you so much for being with us today, for accepting the invitation of being with us today.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.
Muito obrigado por me ter aqui com você e Deus te abençoe.
Amém. Então, para dar início para a nossa conversa, eu queria saber um pouco mais da tua história, porque a tua história se confunde com a história da música cristã, principalmente do meio underground, do meio do rock, do meio metal, e muitas pessoas o conhecem através da lendária Saviour Machine. Mas antes de falar sobre a música, sobre a banda e tal, eu gostaria de conhecer o homem por trás da máscara. Qual é a história do Eric Clayton?
So, before we start, everyone knows you from Saviour Machine. Your story intertwines with the story of Christian music, especially underground Christian music. But we would like to get to know a little bit of Eric behind the mask.
There you go. We can talk, gentlemen. We can speak about anything you'd like. If you want to make this more of a personal interview about, faith and testimony and more kind of behind the scenes things, we can go anywhere you want. We can talk about my music. We can talk about what I'm working on now. We can talk about anything in between. We don't have to talk about music at all. We can talk about anything you want. Okay. So just you guys take this wherever you'd like, and I promise you that it will go in directions you didn't expect. Okay.
Ok. Nós podemos conversar sobre o que vocês quiserem. Nós podemos música, podemos falar sobre aquilo que eu já fiz, podemos falar sobre o que eu estou trabalhando agora, e essa conversa pode tomar a direção que vocês preferirem. Se quiserem não falar de música em momento algum, tá tudo bem. Podemos falar sobre minha vida pessoal, podemos falar sobre o que está por detrás da música, podemos falar sobre tudo. Essa conversa é de vocês.
Maravilha. Então, eu conheci o Saviour Machine através do DVD ao vivo na Alemanha em 1995. Esse foi um disco que moldou meu gosto musical. E a partir daí, o Saviour Machine se tornou uma das minhas bandas favoritas. E aqui no Brasil, até um canal chamado Bora Curtir fez uma homenagem ao Saviour. E como você enxerga a magnitude e a popularidade que a banda possui? Como é que você consegue enxergar isso?
So, I met Saviour Machine live DVD in Germany in 1995, and that record molded my musical taste. From there on, Saviour Machine just became one of my favorite bands ever. Here in Brazil, the channel called Bora Curtir recently paid a really cool homage to Saviour Machine. How do you see the magnitude, size, and the exposure that the band got and the popularity it got everywhere?
Are you, just to understand the question, you are kind of specifically asking how I feel about the kind of growth of the impact of Saviour Machine in South America and in Brazil in particular, or Europe, or I'm not sure. I may have missed just part of it. Your audio cut out for just a little second there, and I may have missed part of your question.
Oh,
in order to answer that question maybe a little better, why don't you just ask it again, paraphrase what you said, and let me listen. Okay?
Yeah. So to start is, how do you interpret the success that you guys have everywhere, especially in South America and Brazil?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I wish I could answer it with more, let's say, more information. But I can tell you, I'm surprised by it, because I really travel outside Mexico. I performed in Mexico. Saviour Machine performed in Mexico in 2004. I think it was the last big Saviour Machine concert we ever did was in Mexico City in 2004. We've never performed in any other country in that region of the world, and I've heard about the success, and I've seen the fan requests, and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and things like that, and I followed as much as I can. But to be completely honest with you, I'm very uneducated about the success of Saviour Machine in that part of the world, because, well, I just first of all, there is a language barrier, and my Latin skills are very, very, speak a little Spanish, it's not very good, but it's called California Spanish. But no, if you remember correctly, I kind of disappeared from the music industry for a long time, about a decade. Maybe during that time, the time where the success of Saviour Machine really began to kind of grow in that part of the world, and maybe I just was kind of surprised by it when I came back into the industry, when I came back into music 7 years ago, after a long time away. I think I was very blessed and moved to find out that Saviour Machine had so much success in that part of the world, and Brazil in particular. And yeah, it's profoundly moving to me, and at the same time, it's puzzling, because I'm not sure how it happened exactly, you know?
Suddenly you see a lot of Brazil comments, right?
A lot of what comments?
The come to Brazil comments.
Controversy, asking about the controversy.
No, come to Brazil.
Oh, come to Brazil. Yeah, sure. No, your audio is breaking up a little bit. So if I ask to repeat, it's not you. It's digital glitching in between.
Yeah, maybe it could be a little bit of the distance, because yours. But I'm now going to move on to the translation.
Okay.
É bem interessante e bem surpreendente que haja tanto sucesso na América do Sul, e principalmente no Brasil, por conta do seguinte: a gente, a última vez que nós tocamos com o Saviour Machine em um lugar mais perto do Brasil foi no México, em 2004. Então, a gente não tocou no Brasil em si, e nem muito perto há muito tempo. Eu passei um tempo afastado da música, eu voltei para esse cenário mais musical há 7 anos, e com certeza esse sucesso, toda essa exposição aconteceu no momento que eu estava longe da música, e isso é surpreendente, isso é muito gratificante, que eu tenha recebido tanto carinho estando tão longe do Brasil, e até mesmo nós fizemos uma brincadeira de que todo o reconhecimento brasileiro é muito sentido quando você entra nas redes sociais, quando você está no Facebook, quando você está no Instagram, e sempre tem comentários em português, pessoas dizendo, querendo que a gente visite o Brasil para tocar.
Cara, aqui no Brasil, o Saviour Machine, ele é uma das bandas que a galera mais curte, sabe? Mesmo não tocando aqui, e que é uma pena até, mas o Saviour Machine, como outras bandas que não são tão conhecidas e que nunca fizeram shows aqui, ela tem uma... Cara, eu não sei como explicar, mas a gente tem uma fascinação por isso, sabe? E quando a gente descobriu, pelo menos eu e meus amigos, descobrimos o ao vivo em Dutchland, né, 1995, cara, foi uma descoberta tão grande, porque era algo que não estava tão dentro do nosso conhecimento. Foi uma surpresa e ver todo aquele aparato, toda aquela questão de identidade visual que o Eric mostra nas suas apresentações, para mim foi um choque, porém um choque necessário para que eu pudesse enxergar e ter um vislumbre melhor da música cristã.
Yeah, it's very surprising and even fascinating that Saviour Machine and you yourself, Eric, has been known still for as Christian artists, because even bands like yours that haven't been to Brazil, they are known and they are loved by people. I remember seeing the live in 1995 DVD. And thinking, being so surprised by how much identity, especially visual identity, was put into performances, put into music, and all things. When all you guys first opened my to a different world of Christian music.
Saviour Machine, first of all, thank you for your comments. That was, anytime I hear origin stories about whether it was Saviour Machine 1 or Saviour Machine 2 or Live in Deutschland, occasionally I hear someone heard Legend 1 or 2 or something like that for the first time, and that was what attracted them in. But anytime I hear a story that, in particular, the Live in Deutschland, that concert, that VHS tape back in the day that used to go around, independently produced, back in a time where it was very difficult to independently produce like live concert films, and that was a game changer. That right there, I believe personally that Live in Deutschland 1995 was not only the kind of apex, the top of the mountain for Saviour Machine, before the music industry changed very dramatically, and before the world got a bit more complicated, before music became free, before the internet became the internet and all that stuff. But Live in Deutschland it's the end of a chapter, and the end of, let's say, book 1, because book 2 would be the Legend, series, and that's a whole different part of the story. So anytime someone tells me that Live in Deutschland was a kind of a catalyst in bringing them to let's say, to an inspirational point, to just something that stirred something in them, or inspired them to do something, creatively or in ministry. It moves me deeply, because that concert was and is, I believe, Saviour Machine's greatest moment, if you had to pick one. Thank you. I hope I answered your question. Then you can ask again. Okay.
Yeah, that answers very well.
Okay.
É muito.
I put the old man glasses on. I can't see you guys. These icons are pretty small, and I feel funny looking at these blurry. I know your faces are there now. I can see them. So
that's good. É muito interessante ouvir que o álbum 1 ou o álbum 2, o Legend do Saviour Machine, tenha tocado pessoas, porque quando nós gravamos, principalmente esse DVD ao vivo na Alemanha, foi algo que para a gente foi muito difícil, foi algo que tomou muito trabalho. Tudo isso foi feito de forma independente, tudo isso foi feito com muito trabalho antes da internet mudar, existir e tornar tudo grátis, tudo mais fácil. Antes da indústria musical ser o que é hoje, é muito mais fácil de se pôr para frente. Eu vi que esse DVD e até outro trabalho como assim tenha tocado, a gente tenha inspirado a gente a ser criativo, a se mover, a ser tocado, a sentir realmente algo de algum tipo de ação. Principalmente por esse DVD, você realmente teve outro trabalho depois. Esse DVD é um livro de muito trabalho que coroa o início do Saviour Machine, que põe se eu fosse escolher um momento para ser o melhor do Saviour Machine, seria esse DVD ao vivo na Alemanha. Ele é uma boa coroação para esse momento, é uma boa coroação para nós estávamos tendo trabalho. E, eu fico movido, muito profundamente quando eu escuto que esse tipo de trabalho tem inspirado. Agora eu vou colocar meus óculos para poder ver vocês melhor. Eu estou um pouco velho e eu preciso de óculos.
Muito bom. E eu vejo que o teatro ele sempre foi um elemento forte nas apresentações do Saviour Machine. Você poderia falar um pouco sobre a importância da performance visual e teatral na sua música?
So, theater is always a very strong element in all of your musical endeavors. Could you think about the importance of visual performance and theatrical performance in the music?
Sure. My brother and I love music. Like a lot of kids that grew up in the 70s. We really love movies. And I think that's where it starts. Jeff and I were so moved by certain films of the late 70s and into the early 80s in particular, growing up, that I'm sure that those films in particular had a great impact on the visual aspects of what we were doing, the cinematic qualities of Saviour Machine, you know. I think Jeff and I both, maybe at the very core, maybe we both wanted to be filmmakers even more than we wanted to be musicians, you know. And maybe that's why it ended up coming out the way it did. I'm really not sure. I just know that between my personal influences, the guys that inspired me, you know, guys like Alice Cooper and Peter Gabriel with Genesis, and obviously David Bowie. Those three guys in particular would be the holy trinity of rock theater, you know? I mean, really. And so from those three guys, you have, I've always kind of considered my character, the White Prophet character I created for Saviour Machine. I always created, I think I created that character out of some sort of, let's say, subconscious amalgamation of those three guys. You know what I mean? At least that's kind of how I understood it early on. It's like, it's a little bit of Alice, it's a little bit of Bowie, it's a little bit of Peter, and it's a little bit of me somehow. And it just kind of, yeah. And I say a little bit of me because obviously that's not, it's a character that I created. And I think that was like an actor for a role. I realized that what I was writing about lyrically was so intense and so heavy and so theatrical in itself that it almost needed a narrator, someone beyond, let's say, me, someone who could speak like a mouthpiece for something beyond the band, you know. And that created the theater, I think, you know. I hope that answered that.
That's really good. Meu irmão, crescemos nos 70 e fomos muito inspirados por filmes, principalmente filmes no final dos anos 70, início dos anos 80. E Jeff e eu, é impossível não citar pessoas até mesmo dentro do rock que tem muito essa ideia teatral, como o Eric Clayton, como o Peter Gabriel, como o David Bowie. É impossível eu falar sobre ser teatral e ter um personagem como o White Prophet, né, o profeta branco, na Saviour Machine, e não citar essas pessoas. Eu entendo que eu e o meu irmão, Jeff, talvez nós quiséssemos ser mais cineastas do que músicos, na verdade. E é muito interessante para tudo aquilo que eu que eu escrevi com Saviour Machine, para tudo aquilo que eu concebi, de existir realmente um personagem que conseguisse falar, que conseguisse comunicar, quase como um narrador, tudo aquilo que está acontecendo. Eu entendo que eu precisava, para as letras, para a música, alguém que fosse uma espécie de centro, uma espécie de narrador, alguém que pudesse falar e fosse um pouco mais do que eu dentro da música.
Falando sobre narrativa, tem a trilogia Legend, né? A trilogia Legend, ela traz uma narrativa densa e também altamente simbólica. Como foi o processo dessa história, que é uma história que conta o livro do Apocalipse, e quais foram as suas maiores influências dentro do processo?
So, the Legend trilogy has really dense and symbolic narrative. How was the process of building this story that's based on Revelation? What were your major influences when writing that?
Boy, that's a good question. It's a big question. How much time do we have?
As much time as you got.
First of all, I have a question for you before I even attempt to answer that question. Did either of you ever read my journals, the journals I published like 12 years ago? I published a book, like a big, thick book of private journals that I've been keeping for like over a decade, 12 years. Did either one of you ever read my collective journals that were published?
I don't think Augusto.
Okay.
Let me see if he has. Você já leu os diários que ele publicou?
So neither one of you have read them?
Não.
Não, os diários ainda não.
It's important that I ask that before I even try to answer that question. And so I'm not rude about it either. It's difficult for me to talk about any of that stuff. And it's not because the project wasn't something beautiful and powerful and ambitious and unique and I could probably come up with a long list of adjectives to describe what the Legend trilogy was and is, and they're not all fun words. They're not all good words because of the personal part of it for me as an artist. You know, it's one of those stories that just doesn't end so happy, you know, as you know, and so it's even difficult for me to talk about some of the great parts of it sometimes, you know, and we can, and maybe as we get a little further into this interview, I may find my way into answering that question and more about the trilogy. I'm just going to let you know that anytime we get near that topic, because of the, well, for lack of a better word, because of the PTSD I have connected to the project itself, it may be difficult for me to talk about. I won't say I won't talk about it, but it may be difficult for me at times, and I may tend to kind of go like this. So just be prepared for that anytime we get into stuff around that, because it's complicated. Like I said, I published 12 years of journals to cover, in particular, what happened to me in my personal life and my artistic life, and the story of basically how Saviour Machine kind of became overwhelmed. My journals, in a nutshell, there we go, to say that. My journals basically are the story of a man and a band who became completely overwhelmed by a project that was too ambitious for what we were, or what we were capable of on our means. And And it's always hard to talk about it. And for all of the, like I said, the beautifully powerful and innovative creative things that came out of that project, there's always going to be a very bitter taste in my mouth when it comes to the conversation. And so it's not taboo. We can go there. Just be prepared that it's difficult at times. Okay. All right.
Toda vez que se fala do projeto Melodia, muitos adjetivos têm a mente ambicioso, lindo. Nem todos os adjetivos são bonitos. Muitos deles são feios, por causa de tudo que a gente passou, tudo que principalmente eu, como pessoa, sei, enquanto produzia, enquanto trabalhava nesse projeto. Os meus diários, publicados há 12 anos atrás, eles contam um pouco dessa época, tudo que eu e a banda passamos. Nós ficamos um pouco muito atarefados, nós ficamos um pouco engolidos por todo esse projeto. Era um projeto maior, mais ambicioso, e posso dizer talvez um pouco além da nossa capacidade como banda. Tudo aquilo que veio de inovativo, tudo aquilo que veio de bonito desse projeto veio com muita dor e com muita... em falar sobre todo esse álbum, de forma alguma é um tabu, mas é muito importante falar sobre toda essa coisa, por causa de todo o estresse, por todo o trauma que eu tenho de todo esse tempo. Para resumir um pouco os meus diários sobre essa época, é basicamente a história de como eu e a banda, nós ficamos, como tudo foi superlativo, como todos os sentimentos foram muito grandes nessa época, sentiu um pouco engolidos. Conforme a gente for conversando, seguindo essa entrevista, nós podemos falar um pouco mais, mas para mim é muito difícil falar sobre o projeto e não ser um pouco amargo sobre como tudo aconteceu por conta dessa dificuldade, por esse processo que nós passamos. Augusto, tá mudo.
Tem alguma interferência de barulho aqui, enquanto eu tô te ouvindo direito.
Ok. Você não consegue me ouvir?
Pronto, mas tá tendo alguns barulhos. Será que é o meu? Deixa eu desligar aqui.
Melhorou um pouco.
Did that throw you for a loop?
I'm sorry?
We can talk, just so it's all clear, we can talk about Legend. We can talk about it. And I think I've had some time to process the entire question and get out my soliloquy. I think, I have the feedback. Thank you. That helps a lot. That helps the old ears here. Your question initially was about the origins of Legend, yeah?
Influence.
The influences?
Yes.
The influences. Well, I mean, I guess you would just have to extend the Saviour Machine's influences into a broader sense, you know? The bands, the artists that influence us as a band are all part of that. They all go into what created Legend, of course, you know? Like little seasonings in a soup or something like that, you know? Obviously, Black Sabbath is huge in that, you know. David Bowie's huge in that. Parts of early Genesis is huge in that, and not so much musically. Those guys were way beyond what we could even fathom when we started making music, you know. But what they were doing visually, especially Gabriel, and thematically with lyrics like "Watch the Skies" and "Supper's Ready" and things like that, you know. You take those again, Alice Cooper, you know, this kind of dark. I mean, he was. People forget he was before Kiss, you know, and you know, and as much as I grew up a Kiss fan, huge part of this, as far as influences, you're talking about influences. My brother and I, Jeff, we both grew up huge Kiss fans. Dean Forsythe, our bass player, founding member of Saviour Machine, huge Kiss fan. So the three founding members of Saviour Machine were all Kiss fans. That shouldn't be shocking when you think about what Saviour Machine was doing back in the day, you know. But it goes deeper than that. It goes before Kiss. It goes to, you know, it goes to the guys I mentioned earlier, that holy triad of rock theater, you know. And so you take those guys and maybe a healthy portion of the Doors, Jim Morrison, and a lot of his apocalyptic lyrical things, you know, especially in things like When the Music's Over in the End and things like that, that early Doors stuff. Jim Morrison was heavily influential on me as a songwriter, just a lyric writer and things like that, you know. So you take all those things, and then I think the key ingredient to maybe where legend was born, let's say in our youth, if you want to take Jeff and I back to a time where, you know, as children, you're growing up and these influences are finding their way in. I think that's the soundtrack, the original soundtrack, which thank God my mom had this, because it was a huge piece of my childhood when I look back in retrospect. Jeff as well. The soundtrack, original recording with Ian Gillan on vocals. Jesus Christ Superstar. A double, I don't know how, you guys are probably too young to remember this, but in the early 70s, when I was growing up, the double album, it was brown, looked like leather on the outside, had just two golden angels on it, Jesus Christ Superstar, and the best recording of it ever, the original recording of it. And Ian Gillan, Deep Purple, you know, and so that might have been, I really do believe that Jesus Christ Superstar might have been the beginning of Jeff and I taking a little interest in rock music, you know. So, and of course that's a rock theater piece on Jesus, so I'm sure it leaked in there somewhere. And then, you know, Jeff and I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. There was a lot of heavy eschatology, a lot of the end is near, he's coming, you better be ready, you know. That's what we grew up with. And so that gets in there too, you know. How can it not get in there, you know? And so I think Jeff and I both grew up with a sense of urgency, like time's coming soon, and there's really nobody out there talking about it, you know. And maybe the few people that are out there talking about it are talking about it in a way that's pretty subtle right now, and feels like it's time for a bold message, you know. And so I think that's where Saviour Machine is born. And then if you extend that and go broader sense, what's the natural evolution of Saviour Machine? The natural evolution of what we were doing on those first two records would be to take it broader and go more specific, dig deeper into the Bible, deeper into the text, deeper into the theology of the apocalypse and the eschatology, and try to do what we were trying to do from the beginning, you know. From the beginning, this band for the end of the world, you know. It was kind of the theme we were trying to bring there, you know. And I think legend was a natural progression of where we were always probably headed. And it really came together, I believe, personally, with a film and a soundtrack. And what inspired legend probably more specifically than anything, to finally get around to your question and answer it succinctly. The Last Temptation of Christ, the Scorsese film with Peter Gabriel's soundtrack, the Passion soundtrack. That record changed Jeff and I's entire perspective of music. And what you could do was Western music meeting Eastern music, and how you could fuse those things together. And I believe, and my brother would stand by this as well, that the Peter Gabriel Passion album, the soundtrack for The Last Temptation of Christ, is maybe the single most influential film soundtrack of the past 40 years, you know, really. it changed cinematic sound. It changed the way people score films, and it changed the way Jeff and I looked at rock music. It did. And from that day forward, we thought, oh man, what if we could we want to do a story about the end of the world, the end of all things, and the coming and the end. And, this has to be global. It can't be just Western music. It can't be American music meets European music like we've been doing. It needs more fusion of Oriental and Far Eastern and things like this. And we need to dig into those Middle Eastern harmonies and notes and things like that. We experimented a bit with Killer. We experimented a bit with The Stand. There's a big step into that arena. The Stand would be a big step towards Legend for sure. But Legend is when we really brought those Middle Eastern and Far Eastern influences into the music, and the orchestra became an essential piece of what was going on, and the choirs, everything that was cinematic about Saviour Machine on the first two albums just became much more to the front, and the band became much more of a support act for a theme that was more massive than any band could ever be. I hope I answered that question, and it was less than 15 minutes, God willing.
No, that's
God bless you, and good luck translating that. I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay.
Falar sobre influências pro Legend é importante também falar sobre influências para o Saviour Machine, porque aquilo que a gente fez com o Legend nada mais é do que dar mais espaço para elementos que a banda já tinha. Se formos falar um pouco sobre influências, nós temos que citar mais uma vez aquela atividade do rock teatral, Peter Gabriel, mais uma vez David Bowie e também o Alice Cooper. Eles foram grandes influências para a gente naquilo que se fala sobre rock teatral. Mas também é importante lembrar que a minha mãe tinha um LP do disco, na verdade, da trilha sonora de Jesus Cristo Superstar, que originalmente foi gravado pelo Ian Gillan, sim, o Ian Gillan do Deep Purple. Então, esse LP duplo, que eu lembro bem, era marrom, tinha anjos na capa, ele era duplo, parecia ser feito de couro, e chegou lá em casa, nossa mãe escutava esse LP, e isso foi grande para mim e para o Jeff. Não só isso, mas também a gente estava escutando até mesmo as coisas do Peter Gabriel. É bom lembrar que o Gênesis, principalmente os trabalhos mais antigos do Gênesis, eles eram teatrais. Todo mundo sempre, quando fala sobre rock teatral, lembra do Kiss, mas nós da banda somos fãs do Kiss. Nós, os 3 membros fundadores, somos fãs do Kiss. Eu, Jeff, e o baixista fundador também era fã do Kiss. Nós temos o Kiss como uma grande influência, mas é bom lembrar que o Peter Gabriel, do Genesis, ele fazia tudo isso até mesmo antes do Kiss. Então, ele foi uma grande influência para a gente. Todas as coisas que eram voltadas para trilhas sonoras de filmes, elas foram influentes para a gente, como eu disse, Jesus Cristo Superstar, também tinha A Última Tentação de Cristo, que também foi uma outra trilha sonora que misturava elementos do rock com elementos do filme, também foi muito influente para a gente, e a ideia era realmente essa. Conforme a gente foi trabalhando em uma história, que era uma história apocalíptica, que eu cresci em uma igreja batista do Sul. As igrejas batistas do Sul nos Estados Unidos, para quem não sabe, são igrejas que elas são bem tradicionais e bem voltadas para a escatologia. Como eu cresci como um batista do Sul, eu tinha muito forte toda essa escatologia. O fim está próximo, Jesus vai voltar, vai ser a qualquer momento, você tem que estar preparado. Isso não está sendo dito, isso não chega até as mídias, então é daí que a parte teológica vem, mas as influências musicais, as influências de visual, de história, todas vêm desses caras. Vem também um pouco do Jim Morrison, vem de Jesus Cristo Superstar, vem da Última Tentação de Cristo. Todas essas coisas foram muito influentes para a gente, também o Kiss. Tudo isso meio que sangrou. A gente já fazia um pouco isso com os primeiros álbuns do Saviour Machine. A gente já tinha corais, a gente já tinha orquestração, a gente já tinha algo teatral, mas quando chegou o tempo de fazer o Legend, todas essas coisas vieram para o primeiro plano da banda. Tudo isso virou o primeiro plano da banda. E tudo que era orquestral, tudo que era coral ficou maior. A gente também, como o fim do mundo teologicamente e escatologicamente é apocalíptico, é global, passa por todo o mundo, a gente não quis ficar só na música americana, a gente não quis ficar só no rock, e a gente foi buscar influências orientais, influências do Oriente Médio, principalmente. A gente foi buscar música de outros lugares, a gente foi buscar influências que fossem mais globais, um pouco menos americanas e europeias. A gente quis que sangrasse nesse álbum, que ecoasse mais nesse álbum tudo aquilo que fazia a música do Saviour Machine ser grande, para que esse álbum tivesse as proporções do assunto sobre o qual ele quer falar, que é o fim do mundo, é o apocalipse e a volta de Cristo sendo visto por todas as pessoas. Eu não consigo ouvir.
Ele falou sobre as influências teológicas, ou melhor dizendo, falou sobre as referências musicais e teatrais, e quais seriam as referências teológicas que ele teve para criar a narrativa do Legend?
So, when you look at the narrative, did you have any theological influences? Anyone that you could single out?
Good or bad, I grew up with some Hal Lindsey books, and I'm sure they found their way into some of my theology. You know, it is what it is. But yeah, I also was very young when I was exposed to the film Left Behind. Anyone remember that one? Yeah, you do remember. Okay, yeah, or no, it's called Thief in the Night. A Thief in the Night. I remember the Larry Norman song. You've been left behind. You've been left behind. You guys should dig this one up if it's a little before your time. But there was a film they used to show in Sunday school, like once a year. It was in the 70s, and you kids will remember this. You know, you church kids in the 70s will remember this. But we grew up with this movie. It was a made-for-television film, I think, or at least it felt like a TV movie. Production values were what they were, but it was horrifying for kids. It was this film about the rapture. And Larry Norman had this song in it, and I just remember, you've been left behind, and it was haunting as a 6-7-year-old kid. And so it might have been one of those things where I was just exposed to that just a hair too early, and you know, that may have leaked into my theology as well. You know, so what I will say is this: before I ever put a single pencil stroke to a piece of paper, I always write lyrics in pencils, because sometimes you need to erase stuff and sometimes you misspell stuff and so forth. But I've always written, and I like the way that writing lyrics feel in my hand. It's just different, something about a pencil. But before I ever wrote a single lyric for Legend, I spent 2 years, 2 solid years, just setting up sketches, broad sketches for the chapters, how each chapter would represent a song. Each song would represent a chapter in the story, and how do I cover not only the book of Revelation, but how do I cover the connections to Daniel and Ezekiel and Isaiah and Matthew and so forth? And how do I do this in music? How do I do this in a somewhat linear narrative, you know? And it's pretty tricky to do something like that. So before in writing a story, you know, it's like, well, okay, I know what the story is, but how do I pen this thing? How do I turn this into music? How do I? And that's where Jeff and I really started taking the Peter Gabriel approach. It's like, listen, you know, look at this as how would you score a film? How would you score a film? This is a story that would be the ultimate film. Can you imagine this miniseries? You know, right? On Netflix, you know. There's no one's ever even attempted to make a film about the end of the world. Can you imagine? I mean, there's things that have tried, I suppose, but nothing's even become remotely close so far. But that was probably the genesis of it, was in that. It's like, let's do this like a film. You know, this music it's not even Saviour Machine anymore. It's the next level of Saviour Machine. Whatever this is next, we're going into cinematic rock. You know, we're the first two records, for whatever cinematic elements they had, Legend would be the natural evolution of two cinemaphiles, two movie junkies, desiring to do something more ambitious with rock music. And I think that's probably where the more orchestral parts come from and all of that. But that Peter Gabriel soundtrack, again, being a genesis in Jeff and I's approach to it and how we're gonna do it. But back to the theology. The theology of all of this was all based on what I could comprehend as how old was I when I started doing Legend? Was I about 27? Something like that? I guess I was about 27 years old. It was everything that I could get my hands on from the time I was about 16 years old, when I became really fascinated with the subject matter. And so it had been about 11 years or so that I had been really deeply fascinated by eschatology, and even had considered sometimes, actually considered furthering education with it, going to college, things like that. But in the end, of course, regardless of my biblical foundation, regardless of my Sunday school background, let's say in addition, not regardless, in addition to those things, in addition to the base that I had as a child growing up, the base of being in a church that is a foundation, you know, a good, strong base to grow up in, to learn in, and explore the Bible. All of those things and more went into my theology, of course, because if I were locked away in, let's say, a cave for all of my childhood, just reading the Bible and just interpreting what scholars and great theologians had to offer on the subject matter, then it would be like this. But I grew up in a pretty poor area of Southern California, and learned more. I learned just as much on the street as I did in a classroom, you know? And it was just one of those things where outside cultures become a part of things as well. There's no way it can't find its way into to what you're doing if you're an artist. And those movies, again, those films and all of that, they find their way in. And so I would say even films, other musicians, things like that. I'm sure things like Jesus Christ Superstar and Genesis, and I think all those things probably found their way into not necessarily my theology, but let's say my approach to how I would bring all of this 27-year-old knowledge to music, you know? I don't know if I answered that, but I'm trying.
It's good. Primeiro de tudo, eu cresci lendo livros do Hal Lindsey. Nós tínhamos também muitos filmes, alguns filmes, na verdade, que falavam sobre o tópico. Eu me lembro que eu posso citar aqui agora o livro, o filme que vocês conhecem, chamado Deixados para Trás. Até mesmo vocês, que são jovens, vocês lembram do Deixados para Trás? É um dos filmes que também fez parte dessa construção de tudo aquilo que eu entendia sobre escatologia. Eu me lembro vividamente na escolinha de domingo, né, na escola dominical, eles nos mostravam um filme nos anos 70 que era sobre o Apocalipse, era sobre o arrebatamento, e eu me lembro vividamente que existia uma musiquinha nesse filme que dizia: você foi deixado para trás. Era algo horrível para se mostrar para uma criança de talvez 6, 7 anos, mas foi assim que eu e meu irmão Jeff, nós crescemos. Então, tudo isso meio que foi construindo tudo aquilo que eu entendia sobre escatologia. Eu passei 2 anos, 2 anos sólidos, roteirizando tudo aquilo que aconteceria nos capítulos, tentando colocar, tentando harmonizar tudo aquilo que acontecia escatologicamente em Daniel, em Ezequiel, em Isaías, em Mateus, junto com o livro de Apocalipse, e tentando roteirizar tudo isso, tentando criar uma linha de pensamento, uma linha de raciocínio que fosse pelo menos um pouco linear, para criar todas essas coisas, juntar todas essas coisas, todos esses temas que, embora hajam filmes que falem sobre o assunto, não existia um roteiro que chegasse perto daquilo que a gente fez com o Legend, pelo menos não ainda. Todas essas coisas foram influência para mim. Eu estudei muito tempo escatologia. Aos 16 anos eu me lembro que eu me apaixonei pelo assunto, e até o momento que eu cheguei ao álbum Legend, que eu lancei com 27 anos, então aí são 11 anos basicamente lendo e estudando escatologia. Pensei até mesmo em fazer faculdade teológica e estudar mais o assunto na faculdade, em algum seminário. Mas foram 11 anos aí de leitura escatológica, 2 anos sólidos trabalhando em um roteiro que fizesse todas essas coisas se misturarem e fazerem sentido. Junto com isso também, toda essa influência teológica que eu tive, tem, claro, como eu já citei, a influência de trilhas sonoras de Peter Gabriel, do Genesis, de Jesus Cristo, Superstar. Todas essas coisas meio que afluíram, todas essas coisas se juntaram e acabaram sangrando, acabaram saindo nesse álbum que foi um esforço gigantesco que nós fizemos. Todas essas coisas se juntaram e todas essas coisas saltaram nesse álbum.
Maravilha, cara. E o que mudou na sua jornada cristã desde o início do Saviour Machine, passando pelo Legend até agora, e como você enxerga o mundo atual?
So, what has changed in your spiritual life since you started Saviour Machine, going through all of those things, and how do you see life and the world today?
I'm not sure if I've changed so much. As far as, I guess you asked how my spiritual life has changed. That was the first part of the question, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's changed as much as evolved, for lack of a better word. My spirit is a lot more quiet than it was 30 years ago. Let's just say that. When I'm spoken to, it's easier for me to hear now than it was 30 years ago, And that not only goes for people close to me, but extended voices and hello. And maybe most importantly, it goes for those little other voices, those voices that we listen for, the voices that lead us, the voices that call us. And it's easy to hear his voice now. Let's just say that. Okay. I spent a lot of time back in those days and a lot of energy trying to express a very grandiose vision, you know, and calling. And time, my life, has a way of, between the project and the aftermath of the project, and then just life itself, time has a way of humbling you and making you pay attention to things that you weren't listening to closely enough back in the day. And so it's profound. It's profound how you can still be the same believer you were 30 years ago, or in my case, 50 years ago. It was 50 years ago that I committed my life to Jesus Christ, you know. The journey has always been a journey, and no one ever said it was going to be easy. And anybody who ever did was lying to you and didn't know anything about journeys. So just say the journey itself has shaped me and evolved my faith to a profound and quiet place of God willing, wisdom and understanding of things.
Eu perguntei como mudou, né? E a resposta dele é de que talvez mudou não seja a palavra correta, talvez mudou não seja uma boa palavra, mas a palavra melhor seria como ela evoluiu. Ele diz que ele ainda é o mesmo crente, ele ainda é um crente, é ainda o mesmo crente, a mesma pessoa que ele era 30 anos atrás, mas se fosse para dizer uma coisa que mudou, é de que agora ele é muito mais calmo, ele consegue escutar melhor, ele consegue entender melhor. Tudo aquilo que antes era impetuoso, com a jovialidade, tudo aquilo que era de muita energia, de muita dificuldade, que era muito, agora se tornou mais calmo. Ainda como um crente, ainda como uma pessoa que crê, mas uma pessoa muito mais calma, muito mais serena, muito mais contemplativa, até mesmo por causa da jornada, porque a jornada sempre segue sendo uma jornada. Já agora, com muito tempo como cristão, eu entreguei minha vida a Cristo há 50 anos atrás e continuo com a minha vida entregue nas mãos de Cristo. O tempo, a jornada, que sempre é uma jornada. Quem te disser que a jornada não é uma jornada e que as coisas são fáceis, está mentindo para você e não sabe muito bem do que está falando. A jornada é sempre uma jornada. E a jornada faz isso com a gente, nos leva com o tempo para um lugar mais calmo, para um lugar onde se escuta melhor todas as vozes que estão em volta, a um lugar onde se entende melhor e se tem mais conhecimento, se tem mais sabedoria e se sabe entender melhor as coisas.
Excelente, cara. Muito, muito bom. E agora me conta como é que você conheceu o The Nine, como foi esse encontro?
So, tell me, how did you meet The Nine?
I moved here to Europe about 7 years ago. Started the process of moving over here. It took over 2 years for it to become fluent and so forth. But I started the process of moving over here because after my first marriage dissolved, my My first wife and I, 29 years of marriage, we divorced in 2013. And I spent a few years in Utah, found my happy place again, found a place to kind of pick up and start again. My children were grown up, I thought they should move on to adulthood. And so I spent a little time in Utah, getting on my feet again, and had some family up there. And out of the blue, I was out of, as you know, I was out of music for a long time. And quite literally, self-imposed isolation had disappeared from all of it. And after my divorce, I really had zero interest of ever coming into music. I really thought that God had ended that chapter of my life, and it was now time for another chapter. And I believed it. And so I went to Utah and I started coaching baseball. It was a passion of mine that I had when I was very young. It was something that I had always did with my kids growing up. I coached a lot. I coached boys teams, girls teams, stuff like that. I coached for a long time, 30 years. But now I didn't have a family. I didn't have a wife anymore. I was living in a state that I didn't hardly know anybody. And so I needed work. So I jumped into being a full-time baseball coach and coaching kids, hitting in particular, hitting instruction. And built a little life there for myself. And was really planning on staying there and just, I guess, growing old and retiring as a baseball coach or something like that. And out of the blue, and I mean this, out of the blue, a very good friend of mine reached out to me and said, "Hey, brother, I know that you're out, you're not interested, but man, I've been praying about this and I've been sitting on this email for a week, and I want to send it to you. But I can't do it without you telling me it's okay. I'm not going to do that to you." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "Brother, I got an email from the Arion people in the Netherlands, Arion, regarding the theater equation project. I don't know if you guys know about that project, but big Dutch progressive rock artist who does these ambitious rock theater pieces. So it's right up my alley, of course. You know, rock theater, a rock opera that I performed on in 2004 before I disappeared, right before. And he wanted to reprise that rock opera on the stage with the original singers that were on the record 10 years later, 11 years later. And Arion Camp was trying to reach me, and I was unreachable. And I guess a very dear friend, that email found its way to me. I engaged them in a conversation, and within 2 months, I accepted their offer to come out of retirement, basically, and perform again. Just as Eric Clayton, as a character in a theater piece, in a rock theater piece. And that's where I met my wife. I met my wife, my current wife, my bride. I met her at the theater equation, performing those three nights in Rotterdam in 2015. From there, we began a long-distance relationship, began dating across the ocean. Eventually, I came here. When I got here, I was deeply in love and inspired, and I realized that I was living in Germany, the place where it all started for Saviour Machine, where it blew up. And that's where it kind of, this record that I had brewing in my head for so long, 1,000 Scars, that's where it kind of started. Once I realized I had a record that I needed to make, I needed a band to make it. And that's where the idea came from. And long short, to answer your question, I started the Nine through a mutual Saviour Machine fan and friend that I knew through my wife, and very kind of close to our little group. And basically that, through a Saviour Machine fan and close friend, the Nine was born. He made an introduction, like a blind date, basically, and that's how it happened. True story, man. Blind date through a mutual Saviour Machine fan, and friend. But in order to say that, how do I tell you, hey, a Saviour Machine fan just, is a friend, I could have just said that to you. I could have just said that, a fan friend hooked me up with some Dutch guys and we got a band. But there's a big chapter missing there. First of all, weren't you married before? And second of all, how the hell did you get to Europe? So they're sorry for taking the time to fill in, but that's part of the story, brother.
That's good. Quando
Lost a man, but I guess you got some time before I don't see our friend here.
Yeah, I think that's the other that speaks through. There's still someone with us in the conversation. Então, depois que tudo aconteceu, depois que eu me afastei da música, eu me mudei, eu tive um casamento que acabou, ocorreu um divórcio, eu quis me mudar um pouco, me afastar um pouco, ter uma mudança de cenário, tentar reviver de uma forma diferente. E enquanto eu estava aí, eu tive um amigo que também era fã do Saviour Machine, que me enviou um e-mail dizendo que queria me apresentar uma pessoa, e aí houve essa apresentação. Claro, esse amigo só iria seguir em frente, me enviar esse e-mail se caso eu quisesse, entendendo toda a minha história, tudo aquilo que aconteceu comigo. Depois de receber esse e-mail, as coisas foram acontecendo. Eu me casei outra vez, conheci a minha esposa, coisas foram acontecendo. Eu comecei a ter material que eu entendia ser material para um álbum, sobre o qual eu poderia escrever um álbum. E aí as coisas foram acontecendo. Uma vez que eu tinha esse material, uma vez que eu tinha todas essas coisas para fazer um álbum, eu precisava de uma banda. Então aí eu fui conhecendo pessoas e foi daí, desse material, que surgiu The Nine. Quase como um encontro às cegas. Ele estava lá para me conhecer nesse encontro, e eu só precisava aceitar o convite, eu só precisava finalmente me apresentar, estar lá e fazer todas essas coisas de novo. É mais ou menos assim que acontece com o rock teatral. Você meio que tem que estar aberto a fazer as coisas, e foi assim que tudo aconteceu. Even without wearing a mask, the mask is always in their head. What is the true meaning of that mask?
Your audio broke up a little bit. I heard mask a few times. Try to ask your question one more time. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Even without wearing the mask is a big element in your concerts. What is the meaning?
Originally, I believe that subconsciously, I believe that a mask could represent a lot of things, for sure. Many, many things. And it was ambiguous enough and, let's say, broad enough in a metaphorical or allegorical way. A mask itself, there's a lot of historical attachments to the idea of a mask or masks or certain kinds of masks, things like that. I thought kind of take it even, let's say, a bit deeper into the concept of flesh. Okay, and I was always fascinated by that, the idea of killing the flesh, the idea of, in order to, let's say, transcend the spirit, and in order for the spirit to truly be a part of what's driving us, the flesh almost needs to be, let's say, destroyed metaphorically. Die unto yourself in order to be saved by grace, and so forth. However you want to put it. In there's many, many poetic ways we can put this, and but I felt like the mask was kind of an interesting poetic metaphor for flesh, and that's kind of where it started. And then one day I was doing some photocopies of some photographs way back in 1990 when we were putting our original demo together. And I photocopied a photocopy and then thought that looked interesting. And then I photocopied that photocopy, and I basically just kept photocopying the photocopy of my face. And eventually it got to the point where it was looking like some Michael Myers looking thing or something just out of some weird creepy movie or something like that. And it became this thing that I realized should be a part of the identity of Saviour Machine. Maybe early instincts about branding. I'm not sure. Maybe just instincts was like, what, the band needs something. It needs something. And so it started off as innocent as that, I think. I felt like, okay, it's an interesting metaphor, and it looks cool, and it works with this whole kind of gothic metal thing that we're doing back at a time when there wasn't even a word called gothic metal. I don't even remember that word back in those days, But, we had our gothic influences, and we had our metal influences, and we had all of our other influences that we talked about. But again, those cinematic influences, we grew up on horror films, the horror films of the 70s, and there's just no way that films like Rosemary's Baby, okay, that's late 60s, but Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the original Halloween and then we go on to like The Shining, things like that, there's no way that seeing those films as a child didn't have an impact on my brother and I's, creative approach. And so, yeah, it had to be that way. Back to your original question. Help me get me back on the original point. I drifted a bit. I tell you that happens sometimes.
It was about the true meaning of it.
Mask. Thank you. So yeah, those in the 80s, you even had things like Hellraiser right around the same time that we were putting Saviour Machine together. So it's interesting parallel. I got called Pinhead a lot in the early days. It was like, dude, you look like Pinhead. It's funny. But like I said, I think those horror films leaked in there as well. And then again, back to that holy trinity of the rock theater gods, if you take Alice Cooper and you take David Bowie and Peter Gabriel, and you take all of the stuff they were doing in the early 70s, it's pretty easy to kind of see how I shaped my image. That's really, I get a lot of credit for such a unique thing, but it really is just a wonderfully coincidental amalgamation, and I was lucky to put it together the way I did, and there's no way I can, as much as that character has become so iconic and such. I mean, there's people that approach me about doing comic book strips and stuff like that. That's a funny idea. Could be cool. But as much as that character and the makeup is so iconic, my ex-wife, Cindy Huckabee, deserves immense credit for that, because it was my idea and I helped shape it, but she was the one who nailed it. She was her artistry and her technique and all of it. And then to be able to apply that stuff, and I went out on stage and put, dumped blood on my face and fake blood, kids, crazy things, and sweat and the way I perform. And Saviour Machine tended to perform between 2.5 and 3 hours. We were like Bruce Springsteen, we never left an audience hungry for more. But yeah, so during all of those things, that mask, that makeup, that character that evolved from that mask, that's another part of the story, and I'll look at that later, because you have to interpret this somehow, and I don't know how you're going to do that. But my ex-wife, I just wanted to I had a chance to thank her for all that work she did back then, and it's profound to me how brilliant her work was, and how it always stayed. I mean, my makeup stayed through 3-hour concerts, through a lot of sweat, and yeah, she's something else. I miss her a lot sometimes, because doing that myself really sucks. I only tried it once or twice, and it's tricky.
Ok.
You're there, brother. Good luck.
Aí, algo interessante da máscara é de que máscara sempre tiveram vários significados, sempre na história, sempre tiveram várias coisas relacionadas à máscara. Para mim, a começar por talvez o significado seria sobre a carne. Máscara, para mim, era algo como uma espécie de mortificação da carne. Todas aquelas coisas que a gente ouve, fala bastante sobre a carne morrer para que o espírito evolua, para que o espírito cresça, para que a gente seja parte de algo maior que nós mesmos. De fazer algo com a carne. Nós precisamos de algum tipo de esquecimento da carne para que o espiritual cresça, para que o espiritual sobreviva. Mas, falando sobre, talvez, influências para a máscara, é importante eu citar também que, como uma criança que cresceu nos anos 70, a gente teve uma safra bem grande de filmes, filmes até mesmo de terror, onde sempre havia um personagem que, mesmo se não usasse máscara, o rosto era bem teatral. Podemos citar aqui O Bebê de Rosemary, podemos citar a saga do Halloween, podemos citar O Massacre da Serra Elétrica, podemos citar até mesmo depois o Iluminado, onde a face de todas essas pessoas sempre diziam algo, a face era quase como um espectro. Essas pessoas não eram exatamente pessoas carnais, mas eram quase como uma força, quase como um espectro presente ali. Então, tudo isso, claro, nos filmes, influenciou muito a gente. É importante falar também, mais uma vez, sobre aquela trindade que nós citamos, aquele triângulo dos roqueiros que eram bem teatrais, mais uma vez Peter Gabriel, mais uma vez David Bowie e Alice Cooper. Eles tinham algo de máscara, eles tinham algo de roteirizar, eles tinham algo de fazer expressões, de serem bastante expressivos e utilizar bastante os seus rostos, quase que como um filme sendo apresentado um filme sendo apresentado no palco. Então, é basicamente isso que influenciou a gente. Já sobre a máscara em si, eu me lembro bem que nos anos 90 eu tirei uma xerox do meu rosto e essa xerox pareceu bem engraçada. Depois disso eu tirei uma xerox da xerox e depois disso uma outra xerox da xerox e cada vez mais xerox eu tirava dessa primeira xerox do meu rosto, mais desfigurado parecia, mais parecia que eu estava abandonando a minha carne, transcendendo, por assim dizer, diante de uma coisa nova. Eu preciso também dar o crédito, claro, para minha ex-esposa, que foi a Cindy, que foi muito... a arte dela sempre muito brilhante, sempre muito, muito, muito bem feita, muito capaz, muito profissional. Ela fazia minha maquiagem, ela trabalhou artisticamente na máscara, e sempre tudo que ela fazia, tudo que ela colocava a mão, ela fazia bem. Eu me lembro de muitas das vezes ela fazer a minha maquiagem e eu cantar, performar no palco, estar 2h30, 3 horas no palco, e isso sempre foi importante para a gente. Oh, wow!
This is the mask.
The mask. Eu lembro de estar por 2h30, às vezes 3 horas no palco, e nós sempre quisemos nunca deixar o palco enquanto os nossos fãs queriam mais, queríamos sempre entregar o nosso máximo no palco. Eu me lembro de estar 2h30, 3 horas no palco, cantando, performando, suando tudo que eu tinha, dando o meu máximo, e a minha maquiagem está sempre lá, pronta. Então eu tenho que dar muito crédito à minha ex-esposa, Cindy, porque ela fazia todas essas coisas muito bem. Às vezes eu sinto falta dela, Muitas das vezes eu lembro, principalmente quando tenho que agora muitas das vezes fazer a minha própria maquiagem, eu lembro dela e sinto falta dela. Ela é uma pessoa muito importante para mim, ela é uma pessoa muito importante para a história do Saviour Machine, ela é uma pessoa que eu tenho que sempre citar e dar o crédito que é devido.
Muito bom, cara, muito bom saber disso. E quando ouvi a Thousand Scars, eu percebi diversos elementos que remetem ao Saviour Machine. Porém, eu senti algo diferente, algo mais intimista, como se você estivesse confessando segredos para um amigo muito próximo. Como você distingue esse disco solo com os outros dos outros do Saviour Machine?
So, when I heard A Thousand Scars, I noticed a lot of elements there are really similar to what you've done in Saviour Machine, but being something a little bit more intimate, like a friend talking to another friend, maybe confessing some of their secrets to another friend who's really close. How do you perceive and maybe distinguish this album from other albums from Saviour Machine?
That's a good question. Give me a second here. First of all, you're right. It's absolutely more intimate, far more intimate than anything Saviour Machine ever recorded, of course. And that's for obvious reasons, being that Saviour Machine was a band and a project, a band that definitely turned into a massive project beyond a band. And of course, I was not only myself in Saviour Machine, but I was also playing a character a lot of the time, you know? Yeah. Take a minute, man. I'm cool.
I'm sorry. Hi. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
There we go. It's because I had my mic turned off for you. I'm sitting outside on my balcony right now, and there's some cars going by, and I just didn't want you to eat, like, you know. So we're good. I hope you can hear me. Hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
I just had to shut the door for a second. My kid singing songs. I love singing.
Any kid singing a song is a beautiful thing, brother.
Yes,
really.
Sir.
Good songs. What were we talking about, brother? Help me get
A Thousand Scars.
Thousand Scars. Yes, it's of course much more intimate because, as I was saying, I poured myself. There was a lot of me in Saviour Machine, of course. You know, any artist who's really being honest with themselves and pouring themselves into their work is going to find themselves in their work. You know, and so there's a lot of me. It's a part of it. And part of me, part of my personality, that part of who I am and who I was in particular back in those days. That part of me became, let's say, mutated between my own who I was, my personality, and this character persona that I created. You know, it's the old rock and roll fable of a rock and roll, let's say, performer who gets too caught up in the character they're playing on the stage, you know what I mean? Or an actor who ends up so deeply in this role that he can't come out of it. We've heard stories about Daniel Day-Lewis taking like 7 years to recover after he makes a movie before he can make another movie. It's crazy, but I get it, you know. And I think that was it, you know. It was Halloween for a decade for me, brother. You know, it was, and so it kind of gets in here and does weird things to your head after a while, and so I think beyond all of that bravado of Saviour Machine, the bravado, the Wagner-esque element of Saviour Machine, think I needed to, after all of it, man, and like I said, the PTSD of Legend, and yeah, the collapse of Saviour, well, myself and Saviour Machine, let's say, just the way Saviour Machine ended, or the way that Legend brought everything to its knees in the end, and this standoff between record companies and management and the band, and this artist who had been completely paralyzed by this project that was a little too ambitious, and the whole thing just turned into, it's like Frankenstein's monster, man. It turns in on itself in the end, music tragedy. I can't remember what we were talking about, brother. We were talking about 1,000 Scars, and I'm talking about why thing collapsed. But that's why it's late. And like I said, I only got a couple hours of sleep last night. It was more like sleep this morning. I'll get there, brother. 1,000 Scars was something I needed to do, brother. I needed to make that record because I'd been through so much, man. Just as a human being, as a man, I lost my family, and not only lost my family, but I lost my band. I lost my way as an artist, and almost lost my soul, brother. Almost, And so I felt like that story needed to be told. Maybe it could inspire somebody who was in a similar place.
Você tá certo, uma ótima coisa. Você tá certo. A Thousand Scars realmente é mais intimista, realmente é um pouco mais sobre mim, e isso tem um pouco a ver, primeiramente, com Saviour Machine. Eu era uma banda, embora fazendo parte de uma banda, eu fazia um personagem, e meio que foi como essa história, as histórias que a gente escuta bastante de atores que fazem um papel e às vezes se perdem um pouco nesse papel, se perdem um pouco nesse personagem e precisam de muito tempo para voltar a estaca zero e poder entrar novamente em outro personagem. Foi um pouco isso que aconteceu comigo. Então, eu, tendo escrevido esse álbum mais solo, sendo esse álbum um álbum meu ao invés de um álbum coletivo, ele tem muito mais de mim. É assim que os artistas são, eles se derramam na sua arte, eles se derramam em seus álbuns, eles se derramam nos seus projetos. E tendo acontecido tudo o que aconteceu comigo, tendo perdido algumas coisas, perdido uma banda que termina depois de 10 anos por causa de um impasse entre gravadora e gerenciamento da banda, nós como artistas perdidos, né? Nós fomos encurralados no meio de tudo isso, tendo acontecido, ficado longe da indústria musical por tanto tempo, tendo acontecido tantas coisas também na minha vida pessoal, mudança, perca basicamente de uma família, ao chegar ao ponto de quase de chegar perto de perder até mesmo a minha alma, eu preciso dizer. Eu senti que eu precisava escrever um álbum que relatasse tudo isso, que relatasse até mesmo o trauma que eu passei com esse tempo, com esse período do Legend e após o Legend, de turbulência, esse período que até hoje eu tenho o trauma, eu carrego comigo o trauma, eu carrego comigo a marca. LA. That's good. Com tudo isso acontecendo, eu senti que eu precisava escrever um álbum, eu precisava comunicar tudo isso, eu sentia que eu precisava falar tudo isso, até mesmo porque poderiam haver pessoas que estavam passando pela mesma coisa ou passaram pela mesma coisa que eu passei. Então era importante comunicar todas essas coisas, era importante falar sobre todas essas coisas, não só para mim, mas também para os outros.
Cara, muito bom saber disso. Eu vou colocar algumas perguntas das pessoas que estão assistindo aqui, tudo bem?
Tudo bem, tudo bem.
Vou colocar aqui o Daniel.
we're gonna have a couple of questions from people.
Okay, that's fun. I'm glad you're reading them, because even these glasses, I can't. I'm just on a cell phone, as you can tell.
Yeah,
So.
same. So here's the first one from Daniel. He asked, is there a possibility, or maybe any sort of aim for a new album, solo album, to be a continuity for A Thousand Scars?
Interesting. Like a second solo album? Is that what they're asking?
Yeah.
Like a follow-up to 1,000 Scars somehow?
Follow-up, yeah, definitely.
You know what? That's a legit question. But to be honest with you, and you, whoever, lovely person, whoever, I'm sorry, I can't read your name right now, but I'm not sure. I'm really not sure if I need to ever make another Eric Clayton record. I think somehow in what's it, a 80-minute record? It's about 80 minutes. It's a long one. I think it's about an 80-minute record, something like 70 or something like that, 75. Somehow in that time, in the time of a full-length album, I think I covered my life story. You know, I really do, at least up until that point. And I mean, unless some really dramatic shit happens to me over the whatever time I've got left, you know, I'm not sure if there's a need for me to ever. I've published journals over a decade ago. I wrote the most personal album I could ever imagine writing. It's so transparent that it's, yeah, I feel naked anytime anybody listens to it. It's bizarre, you know, but it is what it is. You know, there's nothing more pure than what it is, and I'm not sure if I could ever go there again. You know, it was such an outpouring of raw, pure, honest emotion that, yeah, it was like I kind of got it out of my system, I think, you know. But I could tell you this, I haven't lost my my ambition for storytelling, and I definitely have stories to tell. I'm going to stop there so you don't have to translate so much. I realize that I'm making this so hard on you. Do your thing, okay? I got you.
No, it's great to be here. I'm super happy and stoked. Então, não existe. É uma ótima pergunta. Um álbum para seguir o A Thousand Scars. Não, no momento não. Eu sinto que eu disse o que eu tinha que dizer com esse álbum. No momento eu não tenho nenhum plano, a não ser que ocorra uma outra grande mudança com o que quer que seja que eu tenha de tempo ainda nessa terra. Eu imagino que não. O A Thousand Scars foi um álbum meu solo que eu transpareci tanta coisa, que eu disse de forma tão honesta tanta coisa, que eu preciso te dizer, eu me sinto quase como nu toda vez que alguém escuta esse álbum. Eu tem tanta verdade, tem tanta coisa não filtrada colocada nesse álbum, que é quase como se eu tivesse me purificado, como se eu tivesse extravasado tudo que eu precisava dizer. Então, a não ser que ocorra uma outra coisa tão gigantesca, não vai haver um álbum seguindo A Thousand Scars. Mas uma coisa eu preciso dizer, eu ainda tenho vontade de contar mais histórias. So this is a good question. I think it's from a page called Stream Underground.
Okay.
It says, how is your creative process when you decided to write a new album?
That's a great one. I really work on inspiration, and I don't think there's any other way for me to be honest with myself and honest with you other than to say that I don't work on anything unless I'm inspired to do it at this point. And even retracing my entire artistic career, good and bad, times where I was probably great to work with and times where I may not have been so great to work with as far as my obsessive tendencies and hey, we've only been working 27 straight hours. You guys got a few more in you, right? You know, it's just insane stuff. I didn't sleep for a decade, I don't think. But that creative process has always, let's say, centered around an idea, a story to tell. I think in the end, all great rock records, at least, you know, let's say, not just rock and roll, movies, all of it, but they're all connected to great stories. In the end, it's all about the stories. That's all we have. You know, what do we have other than our love for each other and the gifts that we've been given, and the stories that we have to tell, and the stories we have to share with each other and pass on, you know, to our children's children, and so forth. I always felt like I was a born storyteller somehow, you know, and the idea of being a writer was boring. Just the idea of sitting at a desk and writing and typing, no. But making movies, you could tell stories making movies. And my brother and I, like I said, we had as crazy as it was to, hey, let's form a rock and roll band. The idea of becoming filmmakers on the means that we were, like I said, we were not brought up with. We were middle income, a little lower middle income, you know. And so we just kind of came from a place where the idea of even getting a video camera was beyond our means or anything we could fathom. And so, but getting a cheap guitar and a cheap PA, you know, to practice in the garage, to maybe try to write some songs, that was tangible, you know. So get back to your original question before I get too far off the subject. What was the original question again before I get too far off the subject?
Creative process.
The process, yes.
Yeah.
So my creative process tends to go wherever it wants to go, just like my conversation. But there's always a point, and there has to be a story, and that's it. Is with Saviour Machine 1, it's not a concept album, but it feels conceptual. Our 1990 demo, is definitely not how can a demo be conceptual, but yet somehow it feels conceptual, you know? But by the time we got to Saviour Machine 2, it's like, okay, this is a concept album. I feel it, I can hear it, the narrative, this is somehow a concept album. And obviously, from what we learned from making that record is where it's like, okay, let's go into a full-blown concept. Let's try to tell the greatest story ever told. The story nobody wants to tell, you know? And yeah, so again, it always comes back to the story, and I have to have a story that I want to tell. If I don't have a story, and that goes for every song I've ever written, I have to have a story to even tell in that song, from the first word to the last word. If I can't tell a mini story in a song, what's the point of writing a song? You know? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I know there's a lot of music out there that doesn't tell stories anymore, but I think there's ways of telling stories in music, and I hope that continues, you know. But that's a really long way of answering your question, brother. My inspiration, my creative process always starts with the story, and I just need a story that I really, really want to tell, and that's the hardest part to find, is the story I want to tell, you know, or the story that I feel, let's say, I'm called to tell, you know, in that case, you know. I'll let you do your thing.
Primeiro de tudo é inspiração. Tem que haver inspiração, né? No momento que eu estou na minha vida, eu já não dá para escrever sem haver uma inspiração, sem haver aquele ponto inicial, aquela coisa que te põe para trabalhar. Eu lembro que com Saviour Machine, quando nós chegamos ao álbum Legend, isso meio que foi algo pesado para nós, até mesmo um pouco pela minha obsessão em fazer tudo perfeitamente. A gente estava lá trabalhando por 48 horas seguidas, e eu conversava com os outros caras da banda e dizia: vocês conseguem trabalhar um pouco mais junto comigo, não? E assim são as coisas, tem que haver inspiração. tem que haver compromisso, tem que haver uma história, algo que você queira realmente dizer. É assim que as coisas começam para mim. Jacko. E assim as coisas são. Como eu disse, eu e meu irmão, a gente gostava muito de música que contava história, que era conceitual, gostávamos muito de filmes. A gente, de alguma forma, queria, talvez, ser, como eu disse, mais roteiristas e diretores do que, na verdade, músicos, mas a música era algo que realmente estava à nossa disposição, era algo que a gente conseguia fazer. Da forma que nós crescemos, nós não teríamos acesso a uma câmera. A câmera era algo que talvez não chegaria ao nosso acesso, mas uma guitarra barata, sim, um equipamento barato, sim, a gente poderia usar a garagem, a gente poderia tentar fazer música. E esse amor por histórias, e é preciso dizer, histórias são a coisa que move nós como seres humanos. Todo mundo tem a sua história, nós estamos vivendo uma grande história. Foi assim com o Legend, que era a grande história que ninguém, como eu disse, que ninguém queria contar, que não estava nas grandes mídias, e os personagens também que eu fiz surgem assim, pessoas que querem encontrar uma história. Eu entendo que eu sou um contador de histórias nato, mais do que talvez um músico, e assim as coisas são. Tem que haver inspiração, tem que haver uma história que precise ser contada, que eu tenha necessidade de contar. É assim que funciona, basicamente, para mim. Eric, could you talk a little bit about the song, where it starts? And this is a loaded one. And how do you feel writing it?
Some motorcycles just went by. You probably hear that. I have a gorgeous forest this way, and a castle, and then there's this very loud road right over here. So it's the best of both worlds. Where it starts is that's one of those songs on that record. The entire record is, as I said, transparent and intimate. But that's one of the more intimate tracks on the record for sure. That one and Chasing Monsters and a couple others would be about as naked as they get, And I realized in order to tell the story of the rise and fall, let's say hopefully rise of Eric Clayton, in order to tell my story and the story of, there were so many fans, brother. There were so many fans that had genuine worries and concerns and prayers that I was okay because I just disappeared, I pulled a beanie, it was just like I was gone and nowhere to be found. And the last time people saw me in 2012 or whatever it was, I didn't look good. I wasn't doing well. And so I really, the record itself, 1,000 Scars, had to be made, even if I didn't make it for myself as an artist. If it was something, even if it wasn't something I needed to do myself, it was something I needed to do for the people that had put so much, the fans, the friends, the family that had put so much love and grace around me. I felt like I owed them an honest story, and in order to tell the story of 1,000 Scars and to really be honest with it, I felt like there had to be at least a callback to childhood and a beginning. Let's say a preface to the story. You have to, in order to really understand the man. Here's a little bit of the boy. This will give you a little insight to that, and I think it helps. And I, as an artist, as a songwriter, as a lyricist, it was definitely one of those moments where I found myself in very rare territory where it was so raw and so real that
yeah, at times when I was writing it, I found myself regressing almost into feeling like a little kid again, exactly the emotions of feeling like a little boy, you know, and some of those places growing up that were scary, you know, and, intense stuff, man. It's almost like your own, I guess, regressive hypnotherapy or something like that, you know, that takes you back into those places and heavy stuff, brother. I hope that answered it, man. I'm trying.
No, that's good. That's good. That's a really good. Primeiro de tudo, eu tenho que falar aqui que eu estou no lugar perfeito para responder uma pergunta como essa. Aqui à minha direita eu vejo uma floresta, do outro lado tem um castelo e atrás daqui da minha casa tem uma rodovia muito barulhenta e se ouve muitos barulhos, mas é basicamente isso. Esse álbum, ele é um álbum onde eu fui muito transparente, onde eu fui, como eu disse, me sinto nu toda vez que alguém escuta esse álbum, e essa música, junto com Juicy Monsters e algumas outras, são algumas onde eu me sinto um pouco mais desnudado. Ao escrever esse álbum, como eu disse antes, é um álbum que eu precisava escrever não só para mim, um álbum que fala não só da ascensão e da queda de uma pessoa, e com muita sorte seria a ascensão de Eric Clayton. Eu senti que eu precisava começar em algum lugar, e essa música ela é basicamente isso. Ela é um início não só de um homem adulto, mas olhando para a criança. É como se eu tivesse feito uma terapia de regressão e voltasse lá até a infância, voltasse lá do início, como uma criança. E é preciso dizer, existem muitos lugares que são assustadores para crianças, e é daí que vem basicamente o processo, a inspiração principal para essa música, começando a contar a história realmente de onde ela inicia, de onde ela começa, como a criança por dentro ou por detrás do homem adulto, e é basicamente isso. Eu me sinto desnudado quando há algum tipo de composição desse tipo. Ok, oi.
Pronto. Tá me ouvindo aí?
Sim.
Eu soube que ele teve um convite que o C.A.S.H fez para tocar no dia 26 na Alemanha. Inclusive foi por conta dos dois, que foi pela influência tanto do Saviour Machine quanto do The Awakening, o C.A.S.H, que eu tive coragem de montar uma banda na mesma vibe deles, né, que é a Poets Awake. Como é que deu essa parceria entre eles? Qual a expectativa que ele tem desse show?
So, I've heard that you're gonna be part of a concert with Ashton Knight. Another guy I really, really admire. How did you guys meet? How was the invitation?
Okay. That's a great question, one I look forward to answering. First of all, we have not yet met face-to-face.
Oh, no.
Interesting. Thank you, sweetheart. Cheers, gentlemen. I'm going to have 3 hours of sleep just caught up with me. I'm going to have my last coffee of the day, brothers. Maybe it'll keep this conversation on track, not make things so hard for you. Brother, first of all, as a translator, man, I hope you're getting paid well for this, man, because you're really good, bro.
Thanks.
Because I'm not making it easy for you, man. I give you these soliloquies. It's like, I hope you're taking notes so you're just remembering this stuff, man.
I'm trying to remember everything. It's good that I'm letting you speak, because this will be on record, and then even if I suck as a translator, people will always be able to transcribe what you're saying, because it's all powerful stuff.
Brother, I really appreciate what you're doing, man. You got the hardest job here. And trust me, from a 57-year-old man who's been trying to learn German for the last 5 years. Oh, man, anybody who can, it's like tennis, man, and you're right in the middle. So awesome. All right. So the question was, what was the question?
About night. Well, you just said that you guys haven't met face to face yet. But talk about the invitation. How was the invitation to take part in the concert?
You talking about Ashton and I now? Is that what
Yeah,
we're talking about?
Yeah, the upcoming.
Ashton and I have not met face to face, but we, let's say, mutually have, from a distance, have followed each other's careers for many, many years. We knew and know a lot of the same people, and have just kind of done this over the years. We just missed here, just missed there, and finally, a mutual friend. A mutual pastor friend, Pastor Dave Hart of Sanctuary San Diego, who's a dear friend who I've known for a very long time. Ashton as well. He finally just reached out to me and said, "Hey, Ashton's coming to Germany, and I think he's going to be playing a few gigs pretty close to where you live, and you guys should finally meet." And it was one of those like, well, yeah, that's obvious, right? Thanks for letting me know. It was as simple as that. And it was like, because I would have found out he was here, but I would have found out too late. And I'd be like, oh man, I should have gone and met him finally somewhere. Well, long story short, Pastor Dave Hart of San Diego kind of hooked us up. And we had a couple of phone calls, couple of video chats, and instant kinship, instant brotherhood, instant friendship, instant mutual interests, and never a lag in the conversation. And it's a very young and new friendship, but looking forward to where it goes. He's a very interesting young man, and very talented, and I look forward to performing with him. We have a special set planned. I'm going to join him in Dortmund, Germany, on the 26th of October. And I'm going to join him for 4 songs in the middle of his set, or at the end somewhere in his set. I'm going to join him for 4 songs. So we're going to do one of his, we're going to do one of mine, and we're going to do 2 covers. And it'll be a fun night. Really cool.
Na verdade, eu e o Ash conhecemos os pessoal, e é uma história, na verdade, eu e ele, a gente já se admira há muito tempo, a gente já teve contato, não presencial já algumas vezes, mas um amigo em comum, o pastor Dave, que conhece a mim, conhece a ele, um pastor muito amado por nós dois, me avisou que ele estaria por aqui na Alemanha e fez o contato entre a gente, e finalmente vai acontecer. Eu vou conhecer ele cara a cara, pessoalmente, dessa vez. Eu vou participar no show dele. Eu vou, na verdade, participar em 4 canções, uma minha, uma dele, 2 covers, dois covers, né, 2 versões, e assim vai ser. Eu vou conhecer um amigo que eu já sinto que é um amigo, embora a gente não se conheça pessoalmente, alguém que eu admiro muito, um jovem muito extraordinário, e que também tem algum tipo de influência minha, e assim vai ser muito bom, vai ser muito proveitoso. Eu vou estar com ele junto em Dortmund, aqui na Alemanha, e uma outra data que eu ainda não me lembro onde vai ser.
Cara, excelente. Fala com ele que eu tenho uma banda que faz cover da banda dele também.
Como é o nome de novo?
Poets Awake.
He's just saying that he has a band. He's a vocalist. A band that actually does cover of your songs, called Poets Awakening.
A gente já fez cover de Legion.
You said songs, as in more than one? You cover more than one song? Really? Now I'm curious, what songs do you cover?
Quais são as canções que você faz cover?
A gente fez cover de Legion.
De Legion. Oblivion.
Legion.
Yeah.
Isso.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so I don't know, how's it sound? You guys sound pretty good doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, send me if you guys ever have that on video or something, send it. I want to see it. So,
All right, cool. Depois, se puder enviar vídeo ao vivo, ele gostaria de ver.
De Legion não temos, mas a gente pode resolver e fazer.
Oh, yeah. No, they're going to record one now. Next
Right
time
on.
they play, they're going to record one. Because they don't have that on video yet.
all right, cool.
Eu vou mandar mais algumas daqui do chat, tá?
Mm-hmm.
O Daniel aqui.
A question.
Another question, yeah, from Ken. Hi, Eric. It's always good to watch a new interview with you. I'm a big fan of your musical work for over 2 decades, and Saviour Machine is a huge reference for me.
Oh. Amen. That's wonderful.
That's love. Yeah, 2 decades.
That's wonderful. It's always a blessing to hear that something we did over 20 years ago. In this case, I mean, really, some of this stuff goes back. If you're talking about the first album, it goes back 32 years now, you know. And the demo before that, 35 years. It's an arc. I mean, my brother and I started Saviour Machine in 1988, technically 1989 when we started using the name Saviour Machine, but 1988, it's crazy. It's like another lifetime ago, you know, and that in itself is mind blowing. Do me a favor, help me get back on track. I started down something and lost my track there for a second.
But you were talking about all the love that you get, and all the people that come to you, and you were amazed of how something you wrote 20 years ago still touches you.
Yeah, you know what? That's another thing happens besides the lack of sleep and so forth. There is this thing that happens with nostalgia, and I've noticed that as I get older. Maybe it's just getting older, but with nostalgia, when you get into these nostalgia things where emotions get involved and you start experiencing the feelings, it's amazing how you can just get sidetracked on what's like, what was I talking about? All of a sudden I'm feeling a certain way, and it's very strange. But I'm sure some of it's just age. So back to the point. It's profound and it's moving to me, and what a blessing and what a humbling experience to find out that something that you started with your baby brother in a garage in 1988 has this kind of resonance, like throwing a stone into a pond, you know, and just letting it do its thing. And we never had any money behind us. We never had a big label. We never had proper management. It's amazing that Saviour Machine, it blows my mind to this day that Saviour Machine ever got as far as it ever did, considering we never had any real push behind us, you know? It's wild, you know? And then just when we started to really blow up, the internet hit and people stopped buying music, and it was a weird time to be, you know? So it is what it is. But I'm sure I got off topic again by this point, but we were just talking about why it blows my mind that people still care, and it does blow my mind, and that points, you know what, I got to point to something far beyond anything we can do, you know. That's not to, I'm not going to get preachy or anything like that. That's not what these things are for, but sometimes you just got to say, hey, maybe there's a God thing, you know. It's one of those things that's just beyond what we can comprehend, and I just try to enjoy the ride sometimes, you know.
That's good. É engraçado ouvir coisas do tipo e pensar que coisas que a gente faz há muito tempo atrás, se voltarmos no tempo, a banda, o primeiro álbum e já tem quase 30 anos, se voltarmos mais ainda no tempo, o início da banda já tem 35 anos, nós começamos a banda em 88 e começamos a usar o nome Saviour Machine em 89, e já faz muito tempo, são 35 anos, se a gente voltar no tempo. É engraçado o efeito que o tempo tem na gente, né? Até falando de coisas tão antigas assim, coisas que eu fiz há tanto tempo, eu até fico um pouco perdido, me perco naquilo que eu tenho que dizer. É o efeito da nostalgia, é o efeito do sentimento forte, do sentimento grande, que quando a gente fala de coisas passadas, quando a gente fala de coisas que aconteceram há muito tempo, que a gente tem uma conexão tão grande, a gente meio que se perde. Ou talvez isso seja também a idade, não sei. Mas é assim que funciona a nostalgia, e é louco pensar que algo que a gente fez há tanto tempo ainda seja lembrado, ainda toque pessoas. E eu entendo que isso seja talvez até mesmo um toque divino, uma ação divina acontecendo, como uma pedra que é lançada no rio e cria tantas ondas. A gente só lançou a pedra, a gente só fez algo e acontece que todo o resto acontece, Deus faz todo o resto. É muito engraçado também pensar que o Saviour Machine tenha crescido tanto, lembrando desses tempos. Nós começamos sem nenhum incentivo financeiro, sem nenhum dinheiro que impulsionasse a gente nunca teve uma grande gravadora que impulsionasse e injetasse dinheiro na gente. A gente cresceu de uma forma tão orgânica e tão simples, ao ponto de chegar no momento em que bem, a internet explodiu, a internet aconteceu, as pessoas pararam de comprar música, as pessoas pararam de pagar por música, bem, tudo aconteceu como aconteceu, as coisas ocorrem desse jeito, não há muito o que fazer, mas é louco pensar que coisas que ocorreram há tanto tempo ainda toque pessoas. É muito profundo para mim, é algo muito que me toca bastante, que ainda hajam pessoas que lembram e são tocadas, e profundamente tocadas por aquilo que eu fiz há muito tempo. Okay. Eric.
Yeah, man.
Album Legend 3 Part 2 of Saviour Machine. Is it coming out still?
They had to ask, right?
They had to ask, yeah.
You know, first of all, you can't release a record that's not finished, you know. I tried to explain that back in the day when, you know, people decided to try to release something without my permission, without the band's permission, and without it being done, without it being anywhere near done. So all I can say is that in 2007, I guess it was sometime in 2007 that I probably stopped working on it, you know, that I stopped working on it religiously, you know. It's where it was in 2007, the last time I looked at it, you know. So it hasn't quite been 20 years since I took a look or a listen at where it was when I walked away from it, you know. But can't release something if you're not working on it, you know. So it's just, I'll never say, brother, I'm too old at this point. I've seen too many crazy things in my life to say never say never, you know. But there's no way something like that's going to get finished unless I'm called back to it, you know. And at the moment, my path is just a totally different journey, you know. And I know that in my bones, and know that in the deepest parts of my spirit, that whatever I was called to do back in those days, you know, whatever that grand vision was and that grand calling was for Saviour Machine to take on that topic and try to accomplish what we tried to accomplish with that. I know my path is different today at this moment. It's a different path, and And that's not to say that I couldn't get hit in the heart or hit in the head tomorrow, but right now, as of now, brother, my heart is, and my head is definitely focused on something else. And it's Saviour Machine related, I'll tell you that. And I'll give you time to translate this, and then we can really, I'd love to talk about, I'd love to move this to keep it on the topic of Saviour Machine and really delve into what I'm working on right now, if that's okay. Okay, I'll let you do your thing. Okay.
Alguém tinha que perguntar, né, sobre esse álbum. É muito difícil, eu diria que até impossível, lançar algo com o qual que não está pronto. Na verdade, há uns tempos atrás, tentaram lançar sem a nossa permissão, sem a nossa concordância, sem a banda realmente deixar que terminasse o álbum e que fosse lançado. Então, a resposta é que simplesmente não está pronto. Para falar a verdade, a última vez que eu trabalhei nele, ou melhor dizendo, trabalhei nele de forma assídua, realmente ouvi e trabalhei, foi em 2007, então já levam quase 20 anos que eu não trabalho bem olhando e tentando finalizar esse álbum. Eu sinto que, na verdade, o meu caminho mudou muito com o tempo. O meu chamado já não é mais exatamente o mesmo que era há anos atrás. Eu basicamente não trabalhei mais no álbum, eu basicamente deixei de lado. A gente nunca pode dizer nunca, né? A gente nunca fecha a porta completamente. Pode acontecer que algo novo chegue à minha mente, ao meu coração, mas eu sinto que no meu espírito, nos meus ossos, na minha medula, na minha espinha, eu não estou voltado para terminar esse álbum. Inclusive, eu gostaria de talvez falar um pouco mais sobre as coisas com as quais eu estou trabalhando hoje em dia, se também houver mais perguntas.
Beleza, eu vou mandar mais uma aqui, que fala sobre o Saviour e o Eric Clayton.
Okay. Do you have physical copies of all the albums released by you, either being with Saviour Machine, solo, and the Nine? If you do, could you show us that on camera? I'm sorry, Eric, I can't hear you. You're muted.
That's a great question and a fun question, and I probably can show you a couple things. I don't have much. I'm very, very guilty of not archiving my own collection of keeping one copy of this and one copy of that. Over the years, I just stuff sells out, or I don't, and again, somebody wants a copy of something, it's a friend or it's a family member or something like that, or a fan that I meet, and it's like, hey man, I got a copy of this, and I end up giving stuff away, and it just happens. And there would be a really cool Saviour Machine / Eric Clayton memorabilia museum if I wouldn't have given so many things away, but I have given most things away, and so I don't have much, but I do have a couple of cool things. I do have, and the reason I have them is only because of the project I'm working on, which I'll get to. First, I'll show you these things, and I'll tell you about what I'm working on. But I have acquired through friends, fans, and associates, I've acquired some pretty rare stuff over the last few months that I had lost or given away over time, and reacquired things so I could use them in what I'm working on. So give me just a second, okay? I'll mute my mic. I'll get up here and I'll grab a few things, give you a chance to translate this.
Okay.
And, I'll try to set up for a couple of shots where you can see some fun things. Okay, give me just a second.
Ok. Então, na verdade, eu não tenho de todas essas coisas, porque é engraçado. Algumas dessas coisas, com o passar do tempo, eu guardei, sim, uma cópia de tudo que eu lancei, mas acabou que surgiram amigos, surgiram pessoas com quem eu trabalho, surgiram fãs até mesmo que queriam alguma cópia física e simplesmente algumas das coisas que eu tinha, elas foram presenteadas a alguém. Mas eu tenho algumas coisas assim. Eu imagino que eu talvez teria como montar um museu de coisas minhas e coisas do Saviour Machine se eu tivesse guardado tudo, mas essas coisas acontecem. Às vezes surge alguém a quem a gente ama que precisa de algumas, que quer algumas dessas coisas e a gente simplesmente presenteia. Mas eu tenho algo sim, inclusive que vai me permitir falar sobre o que eu estou trabalhando no momento, que eu vou mostrar agora.
So, good time. I have a few things here. It's going to be leave sound effects and everything. Got some really rare things. Let's say the rarest of the rare.
Uhum.
And we'll do this in linear fashion by date. There we go. Just 3 items. No reason to get obnoxious, but so first of all, hopefully you can see that. Is that all right?
Caramba, cara.
Okay, so it's the original cassette, 1993, June 1993, the original release, Intense Records, Intense Pro. Yeah. Cassette, kids, for you under 30, I guess. You've probably never seen one of these. Maybe they're coming back, I'm not sure. But, yeah.
Meu Deus do céu.
Which was, in 1993, this was industry standard. This is before CDs were taking over the market. CDs were on their way, but hadn't taken over. We were selling more tapes than we were CDs these days, But here you go.
Meu Deus do céu, cara, isso é relíquia demais.
That is one of the things that kids these days don't know.
Caramba, manda pra mim. Que isso, cara.
The hard part for when we were doing the artwork for this is trying to get all those lyrics in here. Like I said, it's tricky, but every time you can need a magnifying glass. But which way does that work? There's a lot of them in there. There you go. So there you go. There's the album. There's Saviour Machine 1, June 1993. Limited release in the United States, Christian music industry, mainly in a lot of Christian record stores at first, and until it was banned later in the year, which is a whole other part of the story. But yeah, that's why this is what it is.
All right, let me do the first part. All right, I'm gonna need a second to do this translation first.
Perfect.
Então, aqui eu tenho coisas e são coisas raras, o mais raro dos raros. Aqui, essa primeira coisa é o cassete original. Esse cassete é original, ele saiu no verão americano de 1993, em junho de 1993, original. É um cassete, talvez os mais jovens aqui, vocês parecem ter menos de 30, então vocês não viram isso aqui. Isso aqui surgiu, o cassete surgiu e foi a febre que iria tomar todos os mercados de todos os tempos. Então, tá aqui, cassete original, 1993, com todas as letras no encarte, E aqui nós tivemos a brincadeira que os mais jovens não conhecem encarte. Encarte foi algo que foi perdido com a tecnologia. E aqui está o encarte. Isso aqui é original e é bem raro. Música cristã americana foi para as lojas de música cristã em 1993, no verão, que no caso nos Estados Unidos é no meio do ano, né, de junho a setembro, e foi retirado das lojas no fim do ano, que é algo engraçado aí que aconteceu. Então, foi limitado aí e saiu só nos Estados Unidos em 1993, Saviour Machine número 1.
Cara, isso aí faz parte da arqueologia da música.
Esse é, como eu disse, o mais raro dentre os mais raros.
Como pode, rapaz? Acho que foi surpresa para todo mundo aqui, bicho.
Okay, this came off as a big surprise to us because cassette of Saviour Machine 1 that's greatest of that we did not expect to see.
Well, hopefully I can. I might even. I don't know if I can top it, but I think I can match it, at least as far as interesting. The second piece is a year later. About exactly a year later, in I believe it was August '94, we finally received these. Where's that camera? There we go.
Wow.
The original pressing of Saviour Machine 2. There were only 1,000 copies made. It was exactly 1,000 copies. And as we were leaving Frontline, that was part of our deal. We got 1,000 copies of this thing to see if we could find another record deal or, sell them or whatever we could do as a band moving on from the label. But this CD was our first shot at what became Saviour Machine 2. As you know, the artwork changed, the mastering changed. We were so rushed making this record, so rushed that I wish I had better light for this, but pretty soon you'll be able to see this much better. I'll explain later. But we were so rushed with this, and the label, we were leaving the label. The label didn't want to have anything to do with this after all the controversy in '93. And producing this record they weren't as friendly with us as they were for the first record. The label was not making it easy for us to record. They were fulfilling their obligation of the contract, but just barely. And so we were in the studio with an assistant engineer. We didn't even have a lead engineer on the making of this record. This record was recorded by a guy who was still learning engineering in a massive studio that we barely knew anything about. And the only thing that saved this record was a guy named Brian Key, who was a good friend and maestro, who came in and helped me record the vocals properly and helped us get a decent mix on this. But we were so rushed, and the budget was so limited. This is half. We had half the budget on this that we did on the first record, and half the time and definitely less accommodations, And so all these songs were recorded and mixed pretty quickly, and even worse so, mastered very quickly. And it was a more nuanced record. It was a more nuanced record that had more, let's say, more reason to spend a little more time in the mastering to make sure that it felt just right. And it took a year. It took a year later before this thing was, let's say, before the artwork was fully conceptualized and we got in the blue element. And I wanted stone. I knew I wanted stone from the beginning. The theme of the first album is in space, the masking space. This one, the element's going to be stone, earth, and it's an earthier record, much earthier record. That first record is out in space, but this one's somehow more grounded, more organic, and so the blue stone was the proper evolution of this. But most important is the mastering of this, the proper mastering of this. If anybody who has this, it's a wonderful collectible. I think it's worth a lot of money if you're trying to sell it or something like that. But to listen to, it's definitely not as nice of an experience to listen to as listening to the later master of it. It's cleaner. And God willing, we'll even get a better master of it soon. We're working on something right now. We remastered the first record last year and working on something for this one right now.
Oh,
That's my Saviour Machine story. I'll let you go on that one, brother. Okay.
yeah. Aqui nós temos um outro item muito raro, que é o álbum número 2. Esse é o original. Algumas coisas mudaram, a masterização do álbum mudou, a arte do álbum mudou. Nós estávamos tendo um problema muito grande com a gravadora, depois de toda a controvérsia de 93. Esse álbum vem um pouco mais de um ano depois do primeiro, e foi um tempo de muita dificuldade. A gravadora já não tinha mais boa vontade com a gente queria procurar uma outra gravadora, a gente queria lançar com outras pessoas, a gente queria fazer diferente, melhor. Porém, contudo, esse álbum foi feito muito, muito, muito mais apressado. A composição foi mais apressada, a gravação foi mais apressada. A gente não tinha um engenheiro de mesa, a gente não tinha pessoas para poder gerenciar o som. Quem nós tínhamos como engenheiro era um rapaz que ainda estava aprendendo a arte de engenharia. A gente estava num estúdio gigante e essa é a história desse álbum. A gente... tudo foi feito de uma forma bem apressada e eu entendo que esse álbum deveria ter tomado um pouco mais de tempo, principalmente na masterização, principalmente na mixagem, porque é um álbum com muito mais nuance, é um álbum com muito mais do que o álbum número 1. É um álbum mais pé no chão, na verdade. O primeiro é muito mais do espaço, é muito mais aberto, muito mais airado. Esse aqui é um pouco mais pé no chão, é um pouco mais contido, e eu entendo que talvez a gente deveria ter posto um pouco mais de tempo na mixagem. No ano passado houve uma remasterização do álbum número 1. Se Deus quiser, vai haver uma remasterização desse aqui também. Vai haver algo refeito aqui com esse álbum também, para a gente talvez tirar um pouco melhor, um pouco mais daquilo que foi gravado.
Cara, dos itens esses aí, bicho.
Sim.
Meu Deus do céu, vou mandar mais um aqui.
And now the third, before we go to the other question, you got a third item?
I do.
Só um segundo, ainda tem mais um item.
Ah, beleza, manda.
Segura a pergunta.
Ah, não, cara. Esse aí é o ao vivo de 95.
This should look good, right? So this is an original. We manufactured two versions. It was Western Hemisphere NTSC, and then I think for Europe was PAL. They have two different formats. So there were same video, but it was at a time before it was a global format, and so we had to manufacture copies for European VCRs and VCRs in America and South America and so forth. And so this is in all the, like I said, I've given so many things away over the years. I gave away every copy that I ever had of this at some point, and a very dear friend of mine made sure to hold on to one of these for me, and it was actually a signed copy, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but I think I signed the box, the actual box, the plastic. And I'm not sure why I did, but it turned out that when I opened this thing, interesting, this is where the story gets kind of bizarre. For some reason, instead of, I don't know, in the original here, and it says Saviour Machine Live in Deutschland printed on the box, but this box has a sticky note and some writing on it that says master. And it turns out the actual videotape that was in this box was the master. This is the videotape master. The master that every one of those was basically from. So this is a first generation master from the manufacturer, and it's interesting. I'm not sure, maybe I saved it to auction someday or something. I don't know, but that's my copy. My only copy of 95 is the original master and signed by Eric Clayton. So it's funny. And let's get upside down too. But I just pulled a Trump. It's funny.
Eu conheci o Saviour Machine através desse cassete, cara, dessa fita aí.
Yeah, that's the first. That's he's saying that's the first. How he actually came to know of you guys.
Foi.
Of the interview.
It's a good way to start because I think it was such a perfect introduction for many people. Because even if you didn't hear the first record or hear the second record, you could hear a little bit of both of them in this concert. It was kind of like highlights or parts of both records kind of fused together. More importantly, it wasn't just hearing the songs, you could see what the band was about and what we were trying to present. And that in itself was something unique. And I think back to that time in 1995, and of course we had been doing it for 7 years by that point, almost 7 years. I think back to that time in 95 and think just how different music was and just how different the scenes were and how tribal the scenes were and how the gothic scene was this and how the metal scene was this and within the metal scene there was this metal scene and this metal scene and this metal scene and even in the goth scene there were different factions and like I said, tribal. Everything was, if you had long hair, you couldn't listen to goth. You couldn't be considered a goth because you had long hair at that time, or if you wore heavy metal clothing, it's like it wouldn't be something that like you can walk into a goth club. It was like the goth scene was much more fashion driven and definitely more brooding and more wave driven at the time, much more new wave driven and post punk driven and great scene, but separate from metal. And when I look back now as like I said, a 57-year-old man, and I look back and I think, man, 1995, at the end of this right here, the pop them out, the apex for Saviour Machine, what I believe was, as a band, the farthest we ever reached. And I'm thankful and very grateful and blessed to this day that this is the concert we filmed, because not only did it turn out to be such a kind of an end of a certain chapter before Legend, but it was Dean Forsyth's last gig. It was Dean's last concert with Saviour Machine. We didn't know that at the time, but it becomes all the more kind of mind-blowing over the years. And you look back to that time, and I think about what music was and how divided everything was. And I'd like to think that Saviour Machine was a small part of bridging those tribal, let's say, musical sects, as in S-E-C, I believe, sects, the tribes, the Gothic tribe, the metal tribes, especially, let's say, darker metal tribes, which wasn't, again, another thing. We're talking about when we started in 88. Remember what metal was like in 88, man. I mean, LA metal was the thing. Hair metal was this, it was definitely a kind of hangover of hair metal by that point. But that's what we were up against in LA, where we started. We started in LA, and the scene was filled with a bunch of Warrant, Poison, Motley Crue wannabes. It was a tough time for a band like Saviour Machine to be hitting the Sunset Strip, And so I look back at all of this now, and I think, wow, it's kind of mind blowing that it's no wonder it was so difficult for us to book gigs and to have success in scenes, because we didn't really fit in either of them, but we fit in both. And that's the weird part, is that we started, the longer we did it and the further we went with it, and the more we just kept at it, the more we realized, like, hey, there's some goth kids, there's some metal kids, there's some prog kids here, there's some college kids here, hey, there's some Christian kids here. And then you just start seeing like this. And brother, that's a long way of, hopefully I answered that. I have no idea. I think I was just continuing this. It was the profundity of the end of this chapter, brother. And that'll lead me to my final statement before you guys go. Do your thing.
Aqui tem o que é o original do DVD Live in Deutschland, ao vivo na Alemanha, de 1995. O que é engraçado, esse é uma das coisas que eu consegui guardar ao longo do tempo, como eu disse. Muitas cópias que eu tinha, eu acabei doando, passando para frente para amigos, fãs, mas aqui eu consegui manter uma cópia desse. Muitas coisas engraçadas estão em volta desse lançamento. O fato de, por exemplo, nós termos que lançar dois tipos de VHS diferentes, porque naquela época a fita americana e a fita europeia não eram iguais, eram dois tipos de fitas diferentes, então era basicamente duas impressões diferentes que a gente tinha que fazer. O fato de haver músicas do primeiro álbum e do segundo álbum presentes aqui, e eu preciso dizer que aqui eu entendo ser a forma final delas, o melhor que havia desses dois álbuns, a nossa melhor, como eu disse, o topo da montanha para a gente, a nossa melhor versão, a junção de tudo que a gente já tinha feito aqui. Em 95 nós já tínhamos 7 anos que nós estávamos tocando juntos, 7 anos de estrada, então é realmente o nosso melhor momento. E também o fato de essa apresentação ser vista como a última apresentação do Saviour Machine, ser interpretada dessa forma, né, como a última apresentação, visto que a gente não sabia disso na época, a gente simplesmente fez o DVD e todas essas, como eu já disse antes, a gente lança uma pedra, mas várias outras ondas surgem a partir disso. Então isso aqui é um algo muito interessante, é um item que é muito valioso. Eu não sei porque eu guardei, provavelmente eu pensava em vender ele algum dia. Está assinado por mim. É uma fita que é a fita master, é uma fita muito importante. Então é interessante ter esse item aqui.
Cara, que ele venda para mim. Ô, Walber, eu vou colocar mais uma pergunta aqui e a gente já vai finalizando, beleza?
Problema. We're going to answer what will be the last question.
You ask me whatever you want to ask me, and I will answer it, give you a little time, and then I will tell you what I'm working on. Okay?
Yeah.
You want to ask me, or are you taking one more question from the people at home?
The Reverend Nick, he said, Eric, that I met in a very important way in my...
Hey, brother, I'll stop you. It's breaking up almost every other word for me at the moment. Hopefully your audio is coming through elsewhere, but maybe you can come a little closer to your mic, or I don't know, tweak your phone or whatever's going on. Let's see. Let's try this again. Go ahead.
Hi.
Yeah, stay a little closer to your phone. Let's see.
Tá um pouco distante, Walber.
Yeah.
There we go.
Is it better now?
It's the compression of the mic. If you stay close to the phone or your laptop for a few minutes, we'll get this.
Yeah. Okay. Is it better?
I think that's better. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The message by Reverend Nathan. He said, Eric, I thank God for your life. And I need to tell you that I heard Saviour Machine in a moment very important in my Christian walk. But what's the spiritual meaning behind the song Jesus Christ?
Good one. Well, first of all, amen to the first part of that. That's I've never been comfortable. Never been comfortable talking about lyrics. You know, it's one of those things like an artist paints something, and to ask the artist to explain what it's about, I think it ruins what it's all about. You know, and that's the thing about art, and the thing about transcendent art, anything that lasts, anything that's somehow relevant through time. Whether it comes or goes, the things that are real stay, they last, and people will always find them, God willing. And that goes for all of the beautiful art through history, and dangerous art through history, and controversial art through history. All of it. It needs to be what it is. And help me get back on that original point. See, I just started drifting into, like, I was about ready to start preaching about how we need art. Come on, artists.
No, that's all part of the. I believe. Yes, the question was the spiritual meaning behind Christ.
Thank you. I just feel at its core, I believe that a director should never explain his film. Director commentaries and things are nice, they're nice, they're novelty, but there's some movies I would never want to hear Stanley Kubrick tell us everything that he was trying to communicate while making any of his films, for that matter, but a few in particular. I don't want Francis Coppola to tell me everything about why he did what he did during Apocalypse Now. I know enough. I saw the brilliant documentary that his wife made about that film. But I think the process itself is what the artist lives for, of course, and dies for sometimes. But it's the impact of what it is. It means more to me, and it's way, way more meaningful, way more, and far more profound, to use that word again. When someone discovers something in something that I created, I may know in my heart and in my head where I was going with it, what I intended. But I can tell you this, my intentions, what I thought a song was about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, isn't always exactly as it is today. I can go back and reinterpret some of the things I wrote back in those days and say, I see that even more broadly than I saw it then. So the magic, the glory, all of it, for me as an artist, there would be no point in me ever doing any of this if I ever had to explain any of it. And what it means to you is far more powerful than anything I could ever tell you. That's it, brother.
Amen to that. É muito difícil para mim falar sobre significados, principalmente para a arte. A gente tem que olhar para a arte como algo que... Imagine o seguinte, um pintor pinta um quadro e você olha para o quadro, você sente coisas ao olhar para o quadro e é assim que a comunicação pela arte funciona. Eu tentar dar significados e te falar aquilo que ela é, qual é o verdadeiro significado, isso de alguma forma é contrário àquilo que é a beleza, que é o bonito de se ver em arte. Eu acho que eu talvez não gostaria que um diretor como Stanley Kubrick parasse e me dissesse o que é cada um dos significados dos símbolos que ele utiliza nos seus filmes. Existem sim comentários, aquilo que ele quis fazer, o que foi a inspiração por trás de cada coisa. Esses comentários são bons, acredite, eu já vi alguns deles, tanto do Kubrick quanto também do Coppola, mas eu acho que até mesmo o artista não tem direito de bater o martelo e te dizer o que cada coisa é. Para mim é muito mais interessante, é muito mais profundo, é muito mais até mesmo espiritual. Se você me disser aquilo que você sentiu, aquilo que você entendeu, aquilo que é para você, aquilo que você interpretou. A arte tem bastante disso, de haver uma comunicação que ela não é sempre objetiva em significados, mas ela te traz muito mais a reflexão do que realmente respostas muito, muito estáticas.
Cara, maravilha. Maravilha. E eu acho que eu vou fazer. Deixa eu até aparecer com a outra câmera aqui.
Uhum.
Cadê?
Vamos ter um momento também para ele falar para a gente o que ele está trabalhando agora, para a gente finalizar.
Sim. E era essa pergunta que eu ia fazer mesmo.
Ah, sim, por favor, então, segue em frente.
Peraí. A gente falou muito do Saviour Machine, a gente falou muito assim, mas. Cadê a pergunta? Então, agora que você encontrou seu caminho de volta para a música, né? Quais os projetos que você tem no futuro? Se ainda pensa em escrever algum livro e se tem algo mais para o disco solo, questões mais musicais, outros projetos além do The Nine.
Okay, so we're reaching the end now. You spoke a lot about Saviour Machine, and now it's time for you to tell us what you're working on now. Is it a book? Is it new music? What is it that the future holds for Eric Clayton?
Right on, brothers. So first of all, before because God knows how long this will take, I'll do my best. But before I finish, let me thank you both. And really, it's been a blessing, and unexpected blessing. I had no idea what to expect, especially with the language barrier. And it's been lovely, gentlemen. So God bless you both, and thank you for your time, and thank your audience for me, please. Anybody who's interested in watching this, God bless you.
Amen.
And so let me show you what I've been working on. Sort of. I'll tell you more than show you. I wish I could show you. I can show you soon. So if anybody remembers this guy, I didn't wear a sombrero back in the day, but I just like the sombrero. I keep the sombrero around. It was my last bottle of tequila, is what it was, before I quit drinking. So I kind of keep it around as a little momentum here. But this guy right here got into all kinds of trouble in the 90s. There we go. Lots of trouble. And so, like I said, man, I'm a man who wants to tell stories. And I told you the way Saviour Machine ended is, the whole legend, the way legend kind of just overwhelmed the band and me and all of it. It's not a fairy tale ending for anyone. And so before I'm even ready to revisit any of that or try to conceptualize, like we talked about, will I ever revisit any of that? God knows. What I do know is before I do anything further, now that I've made that solo record I needed to make, now it's time for me to, not just me, but my brother, Dean Forsyth, Nathan Van Halle, Jason Hart, Sam West, Charles Cooper, all of us, all the guys involved with this project. It's time for all of us to find a healthy place for the first chapter of it. The legend story became such a dramatic, bombastic cluster crash of an ending. I mean, just brutal ending to the whole thing. And so that's what everybody remembers, It's always that. People remember how it ends, And there's a story before that that's never been told, brothers and sisters and others. There's a big story that and a very powerful, unique story that needs to be told about everything that happened before legend. And that's the part that people really don't know about. And that's the part that I want to talk about, the part I want to share. It's the kind of beautiful part of the story. You know what I mean? And so it's a weird way to tell a story. I mean, everybody knows it kind of ends weird, but maybe there's a way to put a little bit of a bittersweet chapter to a certain part of this thing. And if anything, for me and my brother and the other members of this project, maybe it can be a part of a catharsis for all of us in healing, you know, because I for sure could use a little more healing when it comes to my SM PTSD, you know. And so that's part of this project, is it's a catharsis for me too. It's putting all of this in perspective, and I'll tell you more about it in a second, because I want to give you time to communicate this. Okay, do your thing.
Ok. Primeiro de tudo, para todos os caras inclusos nesse projeto, todos os caras aí que estiveram junto com a gente, é importante haver um momento de cura. Se vocês se lembram aí desse carinha aqui, ele criou aí muito problema nos anos 90. Eu não usava um sombreiro na época. Isso aqui, na verdade, não é nem um sombreiro, é, na verdade, a tampa da última garrafa de tequila que eu tomei antes de finalmente parar de beber. E eu guardo aqui como uma lembrança disso. Então, há necessidade para a gente de haver uma catarse, haver um pouco de cura. A gente vai estar fazendo aí algo que é basicamente contar a história. Todo mundo sabe como Saviour Machine terminou, todo mundo sabe daquilo que foi amargo, daquilo que foi triste, de toda a sobrecarga que nós tivemos fazendo Legend, de tudo aquilo que fez com que a gente não estivesse mais junto, mas existe muita história por trás, existe muita história anterior que é bonita, e talvez contar esse bonito possa ser uma catarse, uma cura para a gente. Deus sabe que eu preciso de um pouco mais de cura do que eu já tive, com todo o trauma, como eu já citei para vocês. Então, é necessário botar um pouco de doce antes desse amargo que foi o fim.
And finally, so
Excelente. Eu acho que vou fazer.
Oh, you need a minute? Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Eric.
It's come up a few times through the course of the last 3 hours. Nice, guys. We have a 3-hour mark here in just a few minutes. So that's perfect. We'll get this done in 5 minutes. All right. I promise. I talked a lot about how my brother and I just felt like filmmakers at heart, you know? As much as music is our passion, and as much as we hear and see music and can create music together, we've always done it with this kind of cinematic approach. And I think from the beginning, we always felt like Saviour Machine was kind of like a movie soundtrack, you know? And that leads me to where we are. My brother and I in particular, Dean Forsyth, very close, and the extended family of Saviour Machine, all not too far away. But my brother and I in particular are working on, and we have been for 2 years now, it's been quite a process, working on a 10-part documentary series about the evolution of Saviour Machine, starting from a garage in 1988 to Live in Deutschland in 95, covering those years. 7-year period that I've never written about, that's been it hasn't even been talked about much. People, like I said, everybody always wants to talk about Legend, you know, and what happened with Legend. And if they do want to talk about before Legend, usually it's talking about the records. Tell me about Saviour Machine 1, tell me about Saviour Machine 2. But people never ask questions about, you know, hey, you know, why did you and your brother start a band? Why? Why did you start a band? Why did you start making music in the first place? And that's the story I want to tell us, why we started all this and why we kept going, even though everything along the way kept saying, don't keep going, but we did. And it's a crazy story, and it's a beautiful story. And it's not a success story in the, let's say, in the traditional sense of the word, you know. We never made money, we never got global fame. Saviour Machine, you know, Saviour Machine is still an obscure, globally, Saviour Machine is still an obscure art rock project from the 90s, if you think about it, experiment, that never got the kind of global notoriety of later, let's say later Gothic metal amalgamations, things like, Nine Inch Nails or Manson or Rammstein or any of those things that followed Saviour Machine, it's not that kind of story. We're not telling a success story of a band that sold millions of records or anything like that, or had a hit single. It's a story about two brothers that were on a mission from God, and it is what it is. And I'm going to try to tell that story. And I've been working on it with my brother. My brother's doing the music. My brother's been scoring some independent films for the last few years. Brilliant. And my brother's doing the score for this thing. There'll be plenty of Saviour Machine music in it, including very rare stuff that's never been heard or, more importantly, seen. And that's the punchline. This 10-hour documentary, I say 10 hours because it could be 10 hours, but most likely it's going to be in the 7-hour range. It'll be a 10-part thing, probably running around 7 hours in the end, but I won't ask anybody to watch it all at once. It'll be released in 3 parts next year. The first 3 parts will come out in the spring, episode 1 through 3. The summer I'll have episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7, and people can binge and do their thing, take their time, whatever. The final 3 episodes will come out about a year from now, next fall. And so in this 10-part documentary series, we will basically cover it all, from Jeff and I's childhood through how we started making music together in a garage, and how we performed for the first time in our little home church, and how the inspiration from the people in our home church led us to try to take what we were doing into the secular clubs and into the blackest secular places we could possibly find, and how Saviour Machine basically was born out of that. Let's see if we can do what we did in church, and we'll just take it into the clubs and take the mission to the people, And we were young, and U2 was inspiring to us. I mean, what they were doing on a global scale, U2 was becoming huge at that time. And my brother and I were moved by what they were doing. We thought we could do it. We could do what they're doing and move people and scare people and blow people's minds and all this stuff, and it's a story of that. 2 kids with a lot of ambition and not a lot of resources. And so there's a really interesting story that's coming together. I have 120 hours. You do not 120 hours of, it's over that, but that's an easy number for me to a little more than that. 120 hours of documented footage that no one's ever seen. No one. It's private footage. We had a video camera back in the day, just a little camcorder, cheap little camcorder. I think I got it for Christmas one year, and we videotaped everything. We have from our first performances in clubs, even before that, I have Jeff and I performing in church and Signet Committee, the project before it turned into Saviour Machine. I have us performing one of our only 3 concerts. And this documentary is going to cover 1988 and 89 specifically, 90, 91 specifically, 92 leading into 93. That's the first 3 episodes. We'll cover the rise of Saviour Machine, basically leading up to that first record. And then the middle part of the documentary, episode 4, 5, 6, and 7, are going to be a little more traditional in the sense it's the making of Saviour Machine 1. It's going to be a very comprehensive, detailed documentary taking you in the studio. And I told you we filmed everything. I have everything. I have the entire recording of the record on film. And so all this stuff has just been sitting there gathering dust for years. We spent the last 2 years archiving all of it, digitizing all of it, restoring. The restoration process on this has been mind-blowing. And even a little AI at times, but tastefully. That's what we're doing, brothers. I won't go any further because we did. It's 9:01 and I promised we'd stop. So, but I'll just say this. What I've got coming next year, what we've got coming, will be the ultimate Saviour Machine celebration. If you're a fan, it will be like crack cocaine for Saviour Machine fans, for sure.
you can't get any more behind the scenes than what I'm going to offer next year. And I promise you, Saviour Machine will, as promised, will never leave an audience wanting more. It'll be plenty. So that's what we're working on. And so Saviour Machine is very much here all the time, and right here all the time, and right here all the time. And I can't wait to bring this to you people. Oh, finally, if I can plug something, go to my YouTube channel. I never plug this thing. I always forget to. Two Balls TV, TUBALZ.TV, YouTube. Go to my YouTube channel and you'll see the trailer for this documentary. I just released it a few days ago. It's a 2-minute trailer. It's I would be deeply appreciative if my South American, if my Brazilian audience would have a look at this trailer. It's I think it sells the documentary well. It gives you an idea where we're headed with this thing. Okay. So God bless you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time. And I am going to sit here while you do your translation, and then we'll say goodbye. Okay.
Ok. O que nós estamos trabalhando agora, meu irmão e eu, e já temos trabalhado nisso já há um pouco mais de 2 anos. Como eu já tenho dito, nós sempre quisemos ser cinegrafistas, sempre quisemos trabalhar com vídeo, sempre quisemos trabalhar com cinema, e finalmente vai acontecer. Nós estamos trabalhando num documentário de 10 partes que vai ser lançado no ano que vem, e esse documentário ele vai cobrir os anos desde a fundação do Saviour Machine até o DVD de 95, Live in Deutschland. Vocês não fazem ideia, nós tínhamos muitas gravações, nós tínhamos muito por detrás das cenas, tínhamos muitas fitas caseiras, feitas de basicamente tudo que nós fizemos nessa época. Nós vasculhamos basicamente 120 horas de vídeo para trazer para vocês aquilo que é o último, o mais completo conteúdo da Saviour Machine. Como eu disse, vão ser 10 partes. As primeiras partes vão ser lançadas já no início, maio do ano que vem, até junho do ano que vem. Eu digo 10 partes aí que vão somar pelo menos 7 horas. Podem chegar até 10 horas de vídeo documentário. Documentários que vão ter vídeos, partes da gente ensaiando, partes mais antigas a gente tocando na nossa igrejinha quando nós começamos, ainda algumas coisas de antes de nós termos o nome Saviour Machine. Tem um pouco de tudo, nós temos muito vídeo. Essas filmagens estavam todas guardadas, estavam todas perdidas, elas não eram públicas, mas agora nós estamos trabalhando para colocar tudo isso. Meu irmão, na verdade, está fazendo trilha sonora. Nós estamos produzindo, estamos dirigindo, vamos ter esse conteúdo lançado, como eu disse, que pode chegar até 10 horas e nós temos de tudo que vocês possam imaginar. Temos filmagens da gravação do álbum 1, do álbum 2, nós temos por trás das cenas, nós temos de tudo que vocês podem imaginar. Vai ser uma bênção poder lançar isso. Como eu disse já antes, nós nunca deixamos um público querendo mais, nós sempre entregamos tudo aquilo que nós podemos e até mais. Vai ter de tudo nesse documentário, vai ser um documentário de 10 partes, várias horas, vai ter de tudo que vocês possam imaginar, inclusive coisas ainda que vocês não ouviram, vai ter coisa diferente que vocês ainda não ouviram, e é uma junção de tudo isso, do início até esse momento do DVD de 1995, é a parte mais feliz da nossa história, de como nós crescemos de 2 garotos que tocavam na garagem, que tocavam em igrejinha, até um momento onde a gente conseguiu tocar em igrejas diferentes, em clubes muito obscuros, inclusive, como nós conseguimos atrair pessoas que eram da cena gótica, pessoas que eram da cena do metal, conseguimos atrair gente, conseguimos fazer um trabalho que, embora não seja uma história de sucesso. Eu preciso dizer para vocês, não é uma história de como um hit foi feito, não é uma história de como muitos CDs foram vendidos, não é uma história de sucesso comercial, não é uma história de sucesso financeiro, mas é uma história que demonstra como o chamado que eu e meu irmão tivemos, o chamado que nós tivemos, evoluiu e chegou num momento tão bonito, num momento de uma culminação tão poderosa quanto o DVD Live in Deutschland de 1995.
Caramba, eu tô surpreso com a tua qualidade de gravou isso tudo, cara. Você suou, hein?
I had to take a breath before I
Oh no, man, brother! I don't know how you've done this, man. This is intense.
Bob,
the documentary part, it's very important to convey everything that the document is going to see. It is. Wow.
I wish I could make it more clear. All I can say is it's going to be very comprehensive, and I'm not making this thing for. I mean, it may end up on Netflix eventually. Let's say an edited version of it. Netflix isn't going to take that 7-hour documentary on some obscure Christian art rock band, you know. But it could definitely, an edited version, let's say an edited for television version, edited for mainstream, could end up on some platform eventually. But what I'm doing next year is releasing it exclusively to my people and to the people that have supported this project for over 30 years. And it's going to be exactly what I want it to be and what I need it to be, and hopefully what you people want it to be, you know, what it needs to be. But one thing, and I'm sure your audience will appreciate this, we're working really hard. Part of the reason this has taken so long is we are working hard to make sure that when this is ready, that it's in multi-language subtitles, that we've got subtitles for just about every language we can pull off. We'll pull off at least the main ones. We'll make sure to get the South American languages and of course the Germanic and so forth, and get it at least accessible to the people that care to watch and listen and read and so forth. So that part has taken some time, but we're doing our best to make sure that the subtitles will be very, very solid in this thing and properly translated. The footage is mind-blowing, and it's mind-blowing to me, and I've been dealing with it for 2 years, and it's still mind-blowing to me. And when I spend hours a day cutting the footage and analyzing the footage, and it's still pretty profound to me at this point. So I try to keep in perspective. By the time it reaches you, I'm pretty sure this thing's just going to blow people's minds. It blows mine still. So, gentlemen, once again, hey, man, 3 hours, 10 minutes, that's impressive on a Sunday night. God bless you, both. And it's my question to you: will this be on YouTube, like just for infinite amount of time, so I can tell my people about it and let people have a look at this thing?
Yeah.
If they want to spend 3 hours watching this thing, right?
Yeah, people will definitely.
All right, so it's on the YouTube. I can share the link, and we're gold.
Okay.
That's great. I will do. I'll share this link in sometime in the next 24 hours, and maybe I'll sleep a little bit first, but I'll share this soon, and I hope it brings you both and the channel and the people that are interested in all this. I hope it brings us all closer together. Okay.
Yes.
I love you. Yes. Bless you. And hey, have a beautiful one, guys. Enjoy the rest of it. Let's see if we can end 2024 in a beautiful way instead of some catastrophe. You know?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Take care.
God bless.
How do I leave? I'm leaving.
Galera, o documentário que vai vir vai ser top. O trailer já tá no canal dele do YouTube, ok? E já tem um trailer de 2 minutos, já mostrando um pouco do que vai ser, e a expectativa é alta, ok? A expectativa dele, principalmente, é alta, e já disse aí que passou muito tempo ouvindo vendo de novo algumas das filmagens, e até ele se impressiona com algumas das coisas que ele encontrou. Então, são aí 10 episódios, podem chegar a 10 horas de vídeo. É isso aí.
Cara, foi surreal isso aqui. Não somente a entrevista, mas o quanto tu conseguiu pegar tudo, cara, do que o Eric tava falando. Meu Deus do céu, bicho.
Olha, é um cara com o qual 3 horas de conversa te rende muita coisa.
Sim.
Falando sobre como interpretar a arte, como olhar para a arte como cristãos, vida, jornada, ciclos, coisas que começam, coisas que terminam. Sim, o que a gente quer ser, o que a gente consegue ser, como viver com paz diante daquilo que a gente é, personalidade, identidade.
Rapaz, é muita coisa. Valber, valeu, cara, porque tu foi o cara, velho, aqui nessa entrevista. Muito, muito obrigado por ter encarado essa jornada aí. Pessoal que está assistindo, esse episódio vai estar disponível em breve no Spotify. A gente vai dar uma melhorada aí no áudio e tal, que teve algumas partes que teve algumas falhas no áudio, mas faz parte, tá? Então aproveitem aqui esse canal enquanto ele não sabe, porque vai sair do ar, tá? Vai ficar no Spotify, somente no Spotify, beleza? E obrigado pela presença de vocês. Espera aí, tem alguma coisa aqui que tá pitando.
Eu sou mais...
Tá pitando aqui.
Escutem mais vezes, porque uma vez só não dá para pegar tudo.
Verdade, verdade. Então, galera, obrigado pela presença de vocês que ficaram aqui escutando, assistindo. Valeu mesmo. Valber, valeu, cara. Muito obrigado. E Eric, onde você estiver.
Na Alemanha, tá na Alemanha.
Na Alemanha, ele está na Alemanha.
Cara, indo deitar agora, porque já são 9 e algo já.
Sim, o cara tava cantando com Nárnia ontem, rapaz.
Tá indo dormir, porque tava tomando café às 8 da noite.
Tá louco. Valeu, galera. Até mais. Tchau, tchau.